Like you're like an egg,
Let me plug. Maybe if I plug these in, it might help. Is that better?
Yeah, it sounds great, actually. So I guess it was your. All right, everybody. Technical difficulties are pretty much out of the way. This is a live stream that was chosen because of the last video that was running. Everybody wanted to keep going, and unfortunately, my video ran out that I edited. So now we're going to be doing some live things. I won't be here, but I'll be leaving a link for people to join who want to join. I will be in the background, so I can be running around. I can be inviting people. I can allow you to share screen. So don't worry if you want to throw in pictures and share whatever you want. Feel free. I'll be watching to monitor and make sure. Or if I'm not watching, just yell my name. I might hear you. I can run over and invite you guys in. So we're waiting for a couple more people, and other than that, I just wanted to say that tomorrow we are Standing for Truth and I are going live and refuting a video going against young Earth creation by Sentinel Apologetics. The video itself is about 30 minutes long. We didn't really want to play the entire thing because as you pause the video and refute it, it ends up being probably about 3 hours or more. But you know, we've done this multiple times, and every time that scenario plays out. So I don't see why that's not going to happen tomorrow. So I anticipate it's probably going to. So tomorrow we have a long stream for everybody. It's probably going to take place later in the afternoon, and will run for probably 3+ hours. I'll try to not make it last that long. Both he and I talk exceedingly fast for you guys. That can be good and that can be bad. It can be bad because if we're going over technical information, it's just too quick to learn. But at the same time, if we go slow, it's going to be a 5-hour, 6-hour video. So let us know. You guys can vote. How about that? You guys can tell us, what do you want as far as duration goes? Shockingly, some of my longer video uploads get the most views. The last one was 5 hours, and that blew away almost any other video that I uploaded recently. So apparently long videos do good. Are we going to debate Professor Dave? No, he's made it pretty clear he doesn't want to have anything to do with us. He doesn't respond to anything, and he just lives in the comments section being condescending. So he's made no effort to say, let's debate, let's talk about this, let's have a dialogue. None of those things. Not even a written one. Most of these I'll say guys instead of clowns, want to have a written dialogue for, via email for hours and hours and hours, rather than just be here and talk back and forth. I think the reason why is because they'll be exposed that they aren't really the scientists that they say they are, and that everyone thinks they are, and that would probably be one of the reasons that he hasn't reached out. Because, I mean, if people make a video refuting us, do I not instantly make a video countering these things? Don't we go live and refute what they say? Of course we do. I mean, we can't just let these people just talk all this trash and then not do anything about it. He has a large audience, and he doesn't want to make it worse. He saw our video, there's no doubt, and he wants nothing to do with us. Kind of like that other guy, not Professor Dave, but we made a video on him recently. I forget his name. He mostly makes flat Earth videos. He attacks them all the time. I can't remember his name, but we refuted one of his videos, and we never heard from him again. So I don't know. I guess the ball's in his court at this point. So I mean, you can only make so much fun of somebody before they're either going to reach out and say, let's debate, I'm going to fight you back, or they're just going to vanish. And he's one that just vanished. So smart on his part, honestly, because his arguments that he put forth were pretty bad. And then he said that he wanted to make a video refuting that professor on abiogenesis, that would be a horrible decision. He would get destroyed horribly by doing that. He would be better off going against us, honestly, but he's not going to. I'll see. 1 second. I'll tell you the name.
I like the long videos. Gives me something to do all day. I'll just let it play in the background at work.
You're the reason I started making videos not so visual, because making a visual video takes me a lot of time. But if I can make it like a radio podcast where you can just listen, and where I can read off like the pictures that I post, I can read off what they're saying. It's much better for you. So
yeah, I mean the visuals are nice if you can watch them, but for me personally, it's hard. But I can listen to it all day long.
Right. Yeah. Good. So the name was James Tour, by the way. Yeah, James Tour. Professor Dave wanted to take on James Tour. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't.
One of the 50 most influential scientists in the world.
Yeah, that's like saying I want to box. Yeah, sure I do.
Right.
Yeah. Everyone wants to box Mike Tyson until he's standing in front of you.
Well, everyone on the internet is an expert.
Right. Good point, man. Well, I don't know why more people haven't joined. I really didn't anticipate to be even talking this long, but it's going good. It's quiet right now. So again, tomorrow we are going to be going live refuting a fun video on Standing for Truth's channel at probably 6:30, 7:30, and it'll run for hours. So that's the news that I have. Really nothing beyond that, as far as I know. There we go. Yeah. Oh, we got 16 people watching. Now I'm obligated to say something. I can't have all these people sitting here listening to me ramble on. It's too much for me. All right, let's see. Yeah, nobody said anything. Jason hasn't replied yet. So his headphone, he thought he was the reason that there was an echo when it was actually you. So yeah. I'll tell him right now. Actually,
I'm hiding in a bathroom, which is probably why. So without my headset on, it's just a big old echo chamber. Yeah, I feel like an atheist in my echo chamber.
Echo chamber. Yeah, echo chamber. Where's Alex?
That's right.
I can also put an invite into live chat as well. What do you think? That way, if anybody wants to join, we have a topic going off on a complete tangent that had nothing to do with what we were talking or with what I was doing in the video. I was showing a video of an interaction that I had with Aaron Raw back over a year ago on the Non Sequitur show. And then people in the live chat were talking about the Nephilim. So the conversation didn't have anything to do with it. So I figured, why not go live? Nephilim Free was considering joining, so why not? He can come in, take over. That would be great. Yes, I emailed him an invite, and I hope that I told him in time that we're going to live.
Sometimes emails don't get through, so if you've got a message, can message him on his phone, message him on the phone as well, because I sometimes get emails show up a week later or 2 weeks later and stuff. Like, it's crazy. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Right? Yeah. You never know. It's I just hope he left the live chat, and I don't know if he left in time to see me telling him, yeah, come on in and join. I'll go live. And see, because Neff only goes live over the weekends now, he doesn't get as much traffic. Your channel kind of dies down unless you're releasing content a lot on YouTube.
That's why I don't bother to even try to build my channel, because if I put in a year going crazy trying to build my channel, and then I get slack like I do, and I leave it for a month or 2 or 3, then I'm just going to lose all the interaction that I had. So, and it's hard to get it back too, to get people interacting with you again.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a shame. It takes a long time to build a channel. Look at Praise. He had
a lot of work to maintain.
Yeah, he had an unbelievable amount of subs, and then he disappeared for a while, and the audience, well, it kept the subs, but the audience doesn't show up anymore. It's like they move on or something, or they create new YouTube channels. It's you really have
more like YouTube are doing something nasty, sinister there in the background as well. It wouldn't just be that. But you know, I'm sure they're not letting notifications get out or something. You know what I mean? But it's that as well. It is that as well.
Yeah, right. I do get notifications all the time from my own stuff. I love when I spend like 20 minutes writing a message, hit enter, and then it just deletes it. Oh man, I want to break my own finger off.
Yeah.
But now I learned to copy, paste, save it into Google Documents, and then put it back later. So now I don't type anything. If I spend more than 10 minutes typing a response, I save it because it can be deleted quick, even on your own channel. Very annoying.
John's dying to say something. Sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, my internet's is going in and out, so I've only got a second. So the real question is, Sam, are you hiding from your wife in the bathroom right now?
I am. I got fair warning. If I make too much noise.
Well, I mean, I know the other night you were getting in trouble because I think you'd been commenting and bouncing back and forth into streams, into chat and such, and then it's like, oh yeah, I've been doing this for like who knows how many hours straight.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how long.
Typically go to bed early.
Because I'm pretty sure that SFT, he's been very quiet this past couple of days. I think that he must be in, like, maybe he's in, wife purgatory right now and trying to. I'm just saying, he's been very quiet.
He's got to catch up on all those movie nights.
Yeah,
probably
he's got a bill.
Yeah, if you hunt down the top channels, you'll find him. Probably pop in.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. I think he's starting to learn his lesson. He's got to wait for her to go to sleep before he does that. Otherwise, it's like, SFT, what are you doing? I need some attention.
Yeah, exactly. Can't be locked out of YouTube.
Well, that's what gets me in trouble. I wait till she goes to sleep, and then I make her too much noise and wake her up. So
right.
I just can't win.
Well, you can never win with women. I mean, you could be off like being a philanderer. No. You're hiding out in the bathroom to spread the gospel. I mean, it's just horrible. Yes. There's no winning. There's no winning with women.
My life has definitely changed. So I used to do much worse things in the bathroom. We won't go into details.
Hey, speaking of bathrooms, did your ranch end up surviving the fire?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Up in northern Arizona, they had this dry lightning storm, and lightning struck right behind my property, and it came within a half a mile. I almost lost it all.
Because I remember you showing some pictures of, because you'd like built a custom, like a shed that had bathroom and all that kind of stuff, and then you transported it down there, hadn't you? A couple months ago?
Yeah. I mean, I built a glorified shed, and then I built a full bathroom on the footprint is a sheet of plywood, but it has a shower, flushing toilet because I have a septic tank out there, heated a little water heater. I mean, the whole deal, yeah. But the fire. At one point, I thought the fire actually hit my property, but it didn't. So I got lucky, really lucky.
Yeah, Arizona fires. If it hits you, you're pretty much toast. There's not much to burn out there in the middle of nowhere. If you've left something out there, it's gone.
This is northern Arizona, so I do have a wooded lot, actually. Yeah, so it's full of like a pinyon pine and juniper, so there's actually a lot to burn out there. Northern Arizona is a little actually it's miserable. Don't even go there. It's totally horrible, empty, barren wasteland.
Yeah.
Just stay out of there.
I don't like the desert very much.
Don't know why you bought that property.
Too hot.
You say you're getting it now?
No, I mean it's beautiful up there. Northern Arizona is really nice. It's totally different than like the Phoenix area or down there where it's just the hot desert with tumbleweeds.
Yeah.
Totally
My mom's parents retired into Sun City, just outside of Phoenix.
Okay.
It's like I think it's the biggest. At the time it was the biggest like retirement community in the United States. I mean, it's freaking nuts, man. There's more golf carts than per capita than at a freaking Masters tournament. That
Yeah,
place
the
was
cost
nuts.
of
And there
living
was
is
more RVs
incredible.
everywhere. But I used to go out and visit them. And man, it was interesting though. Like even when it was 115 degrees outside, there's basically no humidity, so it wasn't that unbearable.
Yeah, Phoenix is the hottest major city in the U.S., at least as far as I understand. And the cost of living is, at least it was. A few of my friends have moved out there. They bought big 4-bedroom, 5-bathroom houses out there for 250 grand. Being built, I mean, they're not even, no one's even lived in them yet. Where I live, that's a great price.
Well, yeah, I mean you're in California
Yeah,
psycho ward.
yeah.
Yeah. Where Matt lives, he has to hide inside during the day and have the aircon on. He can only go out at night. Otherwise, he'll just poof into a,
Yeah, I
into
don't
a
know how
puff
you
of
guys
dust.
survive in California, man. Like, it's just getting more and more bizarre. And it just,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it is.
No,
man, I
I
get it.
mean,
You got your
that's
lives there, you
true.
got your businesses and everything. I mean, I get that. I mean, it's hard to walk away from. But I'm just like, some of that stuff that's happening out there. I'm like, this is freaking nuts, man. Like, they
They made it
trying
illegal.
to run everybody
They
out of their
made it
state.
illegal for you to work on your own car in California. I heard it's illegal to even change your own tire, or they were thinking of bringing that law in. I think they actually did. You
No,
can check it
that's
out.
in like some suburbs. You're not allowed to you can't work on your own car in your own driveway and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's
Yeah,
oh,
some
that's
neighborhoods
oh, I
have like,
see. So they don't have cars like wrecked cars building up in people's driveways and their front yards and stuff like
Well,
that. I
that was the
suppose.
original
right.
auspice. There's some stuff here. There's like some neighborhoods, like HOAs and stuff here in Nashville that do the same thing. But it's some of the more like the city ordinances. Yes, they were done under the auspice of not having basically they were going after the lower income areas where there'd be 3 or 4 or 5 cars being worked on or one's dead. That was give them justification to come basically the city to come take them away basically.
It's
But
still not a
but then there's a bunch
good
of
idea.
Karens that have over the years, which have now taken upon themselves, if you're changing the freaking oil or you're changing your tire in your front yard, you're technically breaking the law and they call the cops on you. It's freaking nuts.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that it is. That is
Versus
crazy.
running a mechanic shop in the street. It's like I was changing my own tire. Like, what are you talking about, kind of thing.
Yeah, some of their homeowners associations, some of them are really strict. I mean, you can't do anything. You have to mow your lawn or else you'll get a ticket. You can't even park on the street. Everyone has to be parked in the garage at night. You can't have your garage even down. I mean, up. You can't have your garage up at
I
all.
couldn't
Some of
live
them
there.
are really extreme, but some people like that. And then if you get into the places where there's no homeowners association, you could have that nightmare neighbor. So I guess to each their own.
I prefer the nightmare neighbour than to have a homeowners association finding me for having. I'd be in so many arguments and fights, and I'd be in prison in no time in a neighbourhood like that.
Well,
I mean, I'm literally
there
doing
are
life.
regular murders in strict homeowner association neighborhoods. I mean, I'm just saying that it does happen.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah. The more retired people, the worse they are typically because they've got nothing to do all day but walk around and write you
Pick
up.
on people.
Right?
What gets me are the ones where all the little jackasses that, and they've tried to, the fact they even try to enforce these blows me away. But you're not allowed to, you're a veteran. No, you're not allowed to fly the American flag. Those really piss me off. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, if they're trying to fly, if you're in a small, a 1-story house neighborhood and you're trying to fly a 50-foot flag, okay, fair enough. Get a smaller one. But if it's flying a normal size American flag in your front yard or in your window or whatever on your balcony or what, it's I'm sorry, that is justified if you're flying your national flag versus some other random thing,
Yeah.
I agree.
So you could they probably wouldn't even mind in those communities if you put China's flag up in your window, but if you put the American flag up, they'd be horrified.
Right.
Well, there were several lawsuits that I've read about where it was exact same. It was that exact type of scenario. It was a BLM or it was a some other like an LGBTQ or whatever, one of those types of flags, and then they went after the person who was flying the American flag, but then they wouldn't go after one of those because they didn't want to be considered discriminatory. And it's well, hang on, you're saying that flying the national flag has less justification? You can, if you want to call it equal, fine, but you can't say that it has less justification.
I wouldn't say it's equal.
Yeah, I think there's 190 independent countries on the globe, if I'm correct. Pick another one and go there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's like these communists that I always say about, how they love communism, how capitalism is evil and all that sort of stuff. Go live the dream. Go. There's plenty of communist countries on Earth. Just go and immigrate to the communist country.
Well, you know what's
I'm sure
funny, Jason, is it's almost impossible to immigrate to China.
Yeah, yeah. It's they throw they throw the borders open on the Western countries and beg everybody to come and ruin their country. But in China, they're very strict on who gets in and who gets out. Very, very strict.
They say China is going to be the country with the most Christians in the next 20 years. Did you guys hear that one?
No, that's why.
The country with the most Christians in the next 20 years.
China.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, the underground church, they say, is exploding in China, which destroys all this. It just destroys this idea that you're a product of your environment as far as religion goes. If you were born here, that's why you believe this.
Well, I mean, history shows that where the persecution is the strongest is where the flame grows the largest and the brightest.
Right.
Yeah, I cringe every time I hear about the persecution of Uyghurs, and they never ever. You notice that all the thousands of times in the past year we've heard about Uyghurs, they've never once mentioned Christian persecution there. Christian persecution is just as bad. It's just not as seen or spoken about as it's 10 years in prison now. It used to be 2 years in prison for owning a Bible. Now it's 10 years in prison and that's a Chinese prison, mind you. 10 years in prison for owning a Bible. So that's why they have.
Something I find very interesting in context of in relation to what you're saying there, Jason, is so when I was growing up in England, there were several different people that missionaries and stuff that would come through, went to church and such, and stayed at our house many times. One of the things they were doing back then was smuggling Bibles into the Soviet Union. And fast forward to now, when I listen to atheists talk about how oh no, the communism isn't anti-theist, and the Soviet Union was never, Stalin and Gorbachev and Yeltsin and all those guys, they weren't atheists. And I'm like, it was literally an executable offense in different periods of the Soviet Union and portions of the Soviet Union to have a Bible, to be caught praying. People were executed. Families were starved to death for, holding meetings in their houses and stuff.
And we don't hear about it. We only hear about the Muslims.
That the communists weren't against it. You're either an ignorant fool or you're a liar.
Yeah.
Or both.
The Chinese are really like there's just as many Christians in prison and being persecuted and just as badly as the Muslims, but we never hear one single word about them. Always the Muslims. It just drives me nuts. Every time I see a news channel, let me say this. So if there's anybody from the news channel listening out there, if they hear this, every time I see the word Uyghur come up, persecution on any news station, no matter how interested in the story I am, donk, straight off and dislike it. So I'm sick and tired of it. Not because I'm against them talking about Uyghur persecution, but because if they're going to talk about Uyghurs, talk about the Christian persecution 50-50. Okay? Don't just constantly talk about Uyghurs and Muslim persecution and just act as if Christians don't even exist in that country.
All right, so Brandon has one of the best comments of all time. So Cali is the best state right before New York. Biden is amazing. The earth is flat. Matt couldn't fight his way out of a wet paper bag. LPP is dumb, and YEC makes less sense than a pocket in a t-shirt.
That comment sounds familiar.
Yeah, and Jason, it is amazing how the media likes to just gloss over a lot of stuff. However, I am very intrigued to see, in line with what you're talking about there, I'm very intrigued to see how much longer it takes before the arrests start in the United States, because they're already happening in Canada. And there have been a few arrests for Christianity in the United States in some different, extreme instances. But I mean, there's an active movement to eradicate. And the stuff that's going on in Canada right now is disturbing.
Yeah.
Not only
But
the
what's
burning of
going
all
on
the
in
churches, but
Canada?
the arresting of the preachers. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, but they're in lockdown. Okay, look, I agree that these lockdowns are ridiculous, but they're in lockdown, and it's not going to be forever. It's not like they've been in lockdown for 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how long it's been. It's been a while, but it's not like years and years and years. And okay, so I say they should follow the law until, give it a certain amount of time. If then after that the lockdowns aren't working and it's not getting the coronavirus under control, which it never does, because no matter how much they get it under control, like in Australia, they make it disappear completely in places and then it comes back again. So you're never going to get rid of it. So the lockdowns are ridiculous. You need to work out a way to work around it to keep the country open and stop locking down. And they're allowing bottle shops to open. They're allowing prostitute parlors, like whorehouses to operate. They're allowing all this sort of stuff. And the same in Victoria, Australia as well. And they're allowing all these sort of things, but then they say that Christians can't join together in church. And they actually put out an edict, or not an edict, I call it an edict. They made this law that a sex worker doesn't have to wear her mask as long as she's, doing her business. And it's insane. It's insane, but you can't go to church.
Yeah,
so that's the part that's really annoying them. That's what's driving them mad. Like, it should be broad spectrum for everybody. And then if Black Lives Matter protests, they ignore it. If one of those, something like that protest, or Antifa or something like that, they let them get away with blue bloody murder. But Christians do it, and they hunt them and hunt them and hunt them like a hunter hunts a moose or a deer, or a bear. You know what I mean? They're hunting them. It's insane. They're off their heads. You're right, John.
Well, and I agree with you though. Okay, there's a balance of, okay, let's not just refuse something just for the sake of refusal, but at this point enough time has passed, and the point you're making about like different things being given that access, and in Canada as an example, there's been direct contradictions. There's been okay, if you can go to a hockey game, but 100 people going to church is breaking, is going to break the ordinance, you're going to go arrest people.
Yeah,
you've crossed any line of remote genuineness or justified action. Like, it's complete hypocrisy at that point, and you're obviously against religion. And for me, in the context of Canada,
and now they're burning down churches.
Many of the people in power have stated their intent, so it's not like this is being hidden. It's like they've stated they're going to shut down churches. And when you go and when you send SWAT teams to go arrest a preacher driving down the road, and you do it on camera as you're dragging him and his brother down the middle of a highway for holding church, like
when they can have brothels are open and all that sort of stuff, but he can't have church where people can actually social distance in the church and wear masks if they, there's no rhyme or reason to their laws. Their laws are just outright just out to get Christians. And there's been so much stuff coming out about Canada lately that I think Canada should be just kicked out of the coalition against China. We got Australia, Canada, India, blah blah, Japan, and a few other countries, whatever, in this coalition against China. Britain as well. We should just kick Canada out, because as far as I'm concerned, Canada are just absolutely way more bought and paid for than the rest of the Western nations.
Let's just be blunt. The world is toast. The United States no longer stands in the gap to prevent the ultimate collapse of civilization. So, I mean, the end is inevitable at this point.
Yes, that's right. If the United States, if the people in the United States are disarmed, it's the end of it. It's the end for the whole world. People don't realize that disarming Americans doesn't just affect Americans. It's going to affect every single free Western country, every single one. Because once you should have seen it in Australia. Politicians, before they took the guns away, here in Oz, politicians were very circumspect. They were very careful about their laws, and if the public arced up against a law, like they would just go, okay, we won't bring that law in. Whereas after they disarmed the public, you notice that before the guns were taken, they used to say, we're going to bring this law in. It was unpopular. They wouldn't do it. Whereas after they've totally disarmed Australia, now they're even trying to take more guns and going after farmers, and they're taking our knives away. You're not allowed to own certain dogs. You're not allowed. And since they've done this, now they just bring in a law, and it's unpopular. The whole community, 90% of the community is railing against this law, like say building a mosque in a community, like they've fought it for years and years and years, and they'll just ignore the people and just do it anyway. They'll just ignore it. They'll just go, oh, well, we're just going to do it for your own good. You don't realize it, but we're just going to do it anyway. Whereas, so the moment you get disarmed, you think the laws they're making now are bad. Wait till everybody is disarmed and under the thumb like Australia and America. The whole world will just fall. Communism will just walk in and take over. I mean, at the moment, you've only got 2.5 million people in your army, in your military. I mean, at the moment, you've got 26 million white Christian males who are fully armed to the teeth with most of the 400 million guns and 1.5 trillion rounds. I mean, that's a pretty big deterrent for a ground invasion force. You know what I mean? To go into the United States.
That's very true. Now, before we go off on the, because if I allow myself to open up, we'll go down politics too far. So, Sam, you were pointing out a very interesting paper earlier about one of the favorite atheists, the Evo atheist talking points today. You want to share any of that with the audience?
Yeah, the endogenous retroviral. They're saying that there's no more junk DNA, basically. From what I understand.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. And thank you for that. That was an awesome paper. Matt gave me that, and I put that straight in my ERV doc. And that one doc. See, the ERV doc was really incomplete because there's so much, complicated crap around ERVs, right? But that one doc, I put that right at the top of that ERV doc, and I say, read this first before you read the rest of the doc, and then it basically legitimizes my entire Google Doc now. So thanks for that.
Yeah, so we'll see what their reply is.
Well, it's just ERVs. What did they actually say about the ERVs? Can you remember any of the points they made about them? Like
that they were the human genome accumulated a bunch of these things over deep time.
Yeah,
and we know that they're for development, and
I saw one part of it said that the ERVs are essential to our immune system.
Yeah.
Yeah, it also that was one of the other things they discussed in the paper as a potential, not a potential, like an identified function of some of them. Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, all they keep discovering about ALUs, other short tandem repeats, top boxes, other regulatory factors, ERVs, retrotransposons, et cetera, all they keep discovering as our imaging technology increases and the inability to avoid the obvious, mostly in medical research. Screw the freaking Evo atheists and the evolutionary biologists. Those people are coming to the realization that, oh crap, there's all this other functionality, and if we want to actually solve any problems, we must suspend this paradigm that the majority of the genome is junk. I mean, that's just the blunt reality of where things currently stand. And the evolutionary biologists and Team Dodgeball and all them, they can either extend the, RJ Downards and Jackson Wheats and Erica, Gutsy Gibbons of the world can either accept it, or they can continue to live in their little fantasy land. That's just the blunt reality of where things currently stand. And I don't mean it from a YEC perspective. I mean it from a published, peer-reviewed, in Nature, in Frontiers of Genetics, in, high caliber journals. These direct words are being stated, and just because these idiots that we deal with on YouTube don't want to read them doesn't mean they don't exist.
Yeah, well,
do you believe? I just want to ask both of you this: do you believe that ERV doc? Oh damn! I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry, go on. I'll remember later.
Well, it's they'll ask for your source, of course, and then if you provide them with the source and it actually turns out to say what you're suggesting it says, then they want to question who wrote it, or no one understands.
Oh,
They don't
quickly
care.
before I forget, because I got a terrible memory. Do you believe that ERV paper says that that basically sort of confirms the hypothesis that viruses came from our genome and not the other way around, or from genomes? Like I've heard that said before, but do you think this paper sort of adds more credence to the fact that viruses could have come from our genomes and like, I don't know.
You're basically saying they were already there versus being these
what I mean is
insertions.
What I mean is the viruses came from us, not we took on the viruses. Like, how they say that the endogenous retroviruses are leftover bits of virus that got attached in our genome. Well, do you think that those virus bits that got attached in our genome, those viruses originally came from us and then were corrupted? I mean, how did it? Because a virus is just a short strand of information covered by a protein, skin sort of thing. It's very simple, and it only carries with it what it needs. It doesn't carry. It needs a host to survive. It can't produce its own energy, and so I think that it's actually that they came from human genomes and not the other way around, or animal genomes, or just genomes. And I think viruses are some sort of perversion of the genome, maybe. And in the beginning, we didn't need viruses like we do today. Like, viruses kill 40% of bacteria in the oceans every day. If they didn't do that, then blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I'll shut up.
I would
sorry.
John would be the one to answer that. But I mean, if the gut requires viruses, so that baby developing, that embryo,
yes,
that has to be part of the developmental system, is to create the viruses in the gut along with these healthy bacteria, or else the first time the baby has a meal on its own, it's going to die. So, I mean, those viruses have to be created within that baby from the beginning. In order for that to happen, that means those viral sequences have to be part of the, either the gamete or the female egg, or both. Those sequences have to be there from the beginning, or else the baby's going to die the first time. As soon as it comes out of the mother, the baby's going to die. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how...
Well, as far as I'm concerned, what you just said proves that viruses came from us and not the other way around. And viruses obviously produced by our body to perform certain functions may have went rogue, and
Well, here's the thing. One of the biggest arguments that the Evos make in relation to ERVs is that they're in, like, between us and chimps, for example. Oh, it's in the same position or very similar position to in us versus a chimp. Therefore, it must have been. It must be a common descent factor that the common ancestor for humans and chimps must have had this ERV inserted prior to the split. That's part of their argument, right? However, in my position, this goes in line with what you're saying, Jason, is that's like saying, because two trucks have a drive shaft, follow that same logic, like, oh, it must have been in the first one, right? Like, no, I mean, because the drive shaft is in the same position, like the center of the vehicle, like, right, going into the frame, all that stuff. Like, well, that's proof. And it's like, well, no, I mean, from an engineering perspective, of course I'm going to put the freaking drive shaft there. Like, what are you talking about, right? Like, that's, of course we put the drive shaft in that spot. And just the same thing with, like, computer code, like, so I put the CSS file in a folder called CSS, and, like, that's where the CSS gets called from. Like, what are you talking about? Like, of course it's in the freaking CSS folder. And the same logic I'm talking about could apply to any kind of construction, any kind of engineering, any kind of coding. Like, we would be like, that's why it's in that spot. You freaking idiot. Why are you even questioning why it's in the best freaking spot? And yet in these discussions we have, somehow, rather than that necessarily being especially now that we're determining the functionality of this thing, now it's like, so you're saying that this thing that has a specified function that's in a specific spot that you said was crap, and actually has a specific function, you're saying that it's not there for a particular reason? Please explain.
It's a worldview problem. It's a worldview problem. And in the same way, if you can take a residential house or a commercial building and even a boat and an automobile and a plane, and if you look at it on paper, you're going to have these schematics and you're going to have electrical diagrams, and you're going to have a lot of similarities. You're going to have the same copper wires, or your plumbing systems are going to be made of the same material in the house or the hotel or the high-rise building. You're going to have your waste lines and your water lines and your electrical lines and even your air conditioning lines. These are all going to be the same material even. So that's how the intelligent agent builds. It doesn't make sense that we would design, different electrical conductors for all of these different applications. In a sense, right? There will be some unique components, but overall, electrical wire is electrical wire for the most part, and the same with the plumbing and the HVAC. So I don't know why they think that God should have to redesign, start from scratch every single time when we literally build in a similar fashion. That doesn't mean that all of these things are related. That's just a signature of the intelligent agent. But when it comes to God, all of these things, the logic and common sense, it seems like it just gets shut down and turned off, and they're not willing to be rational because it's their worldviews at stake. So they have to be right, or else there is God. And that's the problem. It's not the science.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's that's like John said, things being in the same place. They're not all in the same place. And the fact is that they say that it's more evidence because they were a virus that went into our genome and attached and all this sort of stuff. Well, I just say that I mean, I'm sure they've got endogenous retroviruses in all genomes, right? It's not just in humans, is it? Or what? I can't remember. I'm not really up on genetics.
No, I mean, they're in different...
they're in all animals, right?
They just try to use it as yet another,
it's just a part
they're
of
here,
it's
and
just based on our
phylogenetic trees and such. Therefore, this must mean that because it's there, that they evolved, versus it was put there. And the kind of point that Sam was making, it was put there for a reason. And
right,
to me, I really don't understand why that's such a difficult premise to comprehend outside of you're already operating from a predetermined rejection of the logic. And it's the same thing, like kind of the point Sam was making on like a schematic, right? Like, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Sam, but if you're building a house or doing a renovation, and in the blueprint, it was like, oh, you're gonna put up 7 sheets of drywall next to each other on wall 1.
right.
You wouldn't be like, why would anybody use the same component, in this context, i.e. drywall, multiple times right next to each other? That's just crap design. Like,
Yeah,
you'd be
it's
considered
even worse. It's
yeah,
even
making it
worse for
7
them
layers
now.
thick. I'm a very good plasterer, actually. I can put up fancy ceilings and do all the really difficult stuff that most plasterers are just good at plastering joins and butt joins and internals and stuff like that, whereas I can do everything.
Yeah, so like if you're going to put up a sheet of drywall, regardless of the application, like there's a nailing pattern that you have to follow. So you're going to see, there's screws, so many every 12 inches throughout the field on the sheet of drywall in the house and in the building. Therefore, one evolved. And it's even worse now because it used to be that certain cities or counties would allow their own building code, but now typically everywhere, even around the world, you have the international building code, which is just a standard construction method that will work anywhere. And then within the U.S., you also have the uniform building code. So now everyone who
like if you're going to have double glazed windows or not, for the uniform building code is more for like if you're going to have double glazed windows or regular windows or safety glass or not safety glass. But the international code deals with the actual structure and that you've got to follow these certain rules if you want to build this building this way, otherwise it's going to fall down.
Yeah, so now no matter where you go or what the building is, you're going to see similarities because that's the way that an intelligent agent would have things done. So again, that's just a signature of an intelligent agent. So we shouldn't be surprised when we find these, repeating sequences or these similarities within these, different forms of life, because we would expect that an intelligent agent, which we would call God, would design something, certain components or building blocks, if you will, and use those building blocks for specific functions. And just like an architect would say, well, we are going to use these similar building standards, but hey, let's make something over here look just wildly different than something else over here. And when you study the world of architecture, you can see some pretty amazing and unique structures. So this argument that, well, why didn't God just make everything the same? That's ridiculous, because the intelligent human wouldn't do that. Like, we see beauty in design when we see, some people are fascinated with certain automobiles, especially these exotic automobiles, or boats even, right? And it's the same with buildings and houses. There's different styles. There's, like a Hawaiian, maybe straw hut style, or, Cape Cod is a style, or you could have like industrial looks in certain restaurants. And we have all this beauty in design, but under this, facade of design, you're going to see similarities within the construction methods and the different components that they use. That's how intelligent people do stuff.
Something I find very interesting in a lot of the discussions, and this kind of correlates to your point of the overall structural components of, in the discussions, like, oh, well, with, proteins, you can knock
We can
out.
barely hear you.
Yeah, your mic's.
There's something wrong. We must be far away or hidden underneath a flap of clothing or something.
Phone's right next to my mouth. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but it sounds like Darth Vader.
Yeah, it sounds like, and it's you can understand most of the words, like most of them, the vast majority, but there's the odd one here and there that you just can't understand.
Must be my internet.
Yeah, that's all right. Don't worry about it. Just keep going, because you can understand the vast majority of what you're saying anyway, so it doesn't matter. Go on.
I can't refresh because Matt's not here. Anyway, my internet's getting there. There's a thunderstorm coming through. I have to drop off anyway. My point where I was going with is in the context of like functional proteins, of a lot in terms of the plausibility of the evolution of them. It's like they want to act like, oh, if you have a completed house or a completed frame, let's say, and you have the drywall up there, if you knocked out one of the drywall panels, the house doesn't fall down. Therefore, the building of the house is not that big a deal. And like, okay, so you have the entire frame, and one little piece that's not a supporting wall got knocked out, got destroyed, and you're claiming because the house didn't fall over that it's not significant. Well, what happens if you delete, the corner of the frame, the corner component of the frame? Like, okay, cool, I have all of my drywall still there, but I deleted the frame or a portion of the supporting beams or whatever, and then it collapses. Like, hello, of course it does. This is not that complicated, but somehow they want to act like they're reciprocal of that in terms of evolution of biological function is no big deal and wouldn't run into the exact same issues.
Yeah, it's almost like a type of redundancy, I'd say, when it comes to building a house. If you were an architect or an engineer and you built a structure that was so, I guess, susceptible to catastrophic failure by simply removing one particular element, then you're going to
go for a little while. Sorry to cut you off, man. I really hate it when people do that to me. Sorry, but I got to go for a little while. My dog's busting to get outside, so I'll be back.
All right, Jason. Good to talk to you, man. But if you're going to build in that way where the littlest thing is going to cause a catastrophic failure, then you're going to be a bad designer. These houses are built in a way that, certain, even load-bearing elements can be compromised to some degree anyway, and the structure will still be sound, especially, like here in California, we build things because there are earthquakes here. So the houses, believe it or not, are actually overbuilt dramatically, and you can remove certain walls that are not designed to be removed, but because the house is almost, interwoven by design. I know these people try to argue that redundancy represents a bad design, but the opposite is true. You know, you shouldn't have a design that every little thing is going to compromise the design completely. That's the signature of a bad design. So, and that's a pretty arbitrary word, you know, when they say something is good or bad. You know, that presupposes that you know the intent of the designer.
Well, you know, humans, we are the supreme intellect. So,
Yeah.
Hey guys,
It's,
how's it going?
if it will refute God, then we'll just say it. It doesn't even have to make sense. Hey, Neff. How you doing,
Hey,
man?
can I be heard? Is my mic working okay?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Great. Good to see you guys. How's it going? Hey, John.
Yeah, you too, man.
hey, what's up, Neff?
Good to see you, Sam and John.
Hey, yeah, I just refreshed. Am I still sounding like Darth Vader?
No,
No,
you
you-
sound good now. Yeah, I can hear you, Neff. Can you not hear us?
Yes, sir, I do.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these discussion points at this point, I mean, in terms of the analogy we're giving right now of supporting beams and frame and so on and so forth, we now can identify those same types of components inside of the protein sequences. Like, it's not a question anymore. Like, we know this. Oh, here's a turn. Here's a left turn. Here's a right turn. Here's this beta sheet. Here's this support piece. Here's this helix. Like, we now can map this. We can 3D model it. And it's like, okay, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, when you have to have this sequence inside of the sequence in order for it to turn left and then fold, and then you have a longer piece that's now, because of the left turn, is now going to fold into this angle. And if you don't have it at this angle, then the molecular binding cannot occur.
Right.
And they're like, oh, it's not that big a deal. And I'm like, it's a freaking right angle turn. And if you don't have the turn, it goes in the opposite direction. And as much as you guys love to scream ad nauseum about, like, it's just chemical reactions. Well, guess what, dumbass? If you don't have the molecules next to each other, they don't bind. So if they're going the opposite direction, your whole chemical reaction doesn't happen, period. So explain to me how this works and how you have quote unquote fitness if you don't have the left turn or the right turn or the heel or whatever it may be in this exact spot, which we know it must be in this exact spot, otherwise you're toast. Now, after this turn, you can have breakdowns, those little pieces isn't quite right, whatnot. But if you don't have this specific spot in this specific place, you're toast. But somehow these things all manage to end up in the exact location that's necessary. I know a lot of people that we argue with, Neff and Sam. Like, I know a lot of them are just ignorant. They have no idea what we're talking about right now. But the ones that
people,
study it,
what
I
you're
don't
talking
understand
about
how they
goes over their
convince
heads, John. Most people don't really know what it is you're talking about. Let me surmise what John's talking about, and then I'll give the mic back to him. What John is talking about is the specificity of the angle and the rotation of amino acids in the formation of a protein. It is so uber specific that it boggles the mind. And if mutation, randomness were involved in this, you wouldn't have functional proteins. Did I get it right, John?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And it's just like, before you came in, Neff, Sam and I were talking about, like, from a construction perspective. And it's like, it's the equivalent of being like, the schematic says we need a 4x4 that is 10 feet, 2 and 3, 2 and 3, 4, or 10 feet, 2 inches. It's got to be 10 feet, 2 inches, right? And then somebody cuts it at 9 feet, 8. And then you're like, well, I guess we'll just put it in there. I mean, like, no, you can't just put it in there. It's too short. And the exact same type of thing is what we're talking about in proteins. And it's like, oh no, it's fine. It just didn't work quite right. Yeah, okay, bro. So let's think about this for a second. You have a 16-inch rim, but you've got a 24-inch tire. Congratulations, you have a tire and a rim. Is your car gonna freaking drive? Well, obviously the answer is no. Well, it might be able to roll, but it's not gonna be rolling on that tire, and you're not gonna go very far. I mean, it's just like, I don't know. I get so irritated with this stuff, especially as we all know, we're not talking about just random chemical reactions here. We're talking about like biomechanical machines that are operating with such extreme precision that you will, to use your phrase, Neff, boggles the mind. I mean,
Oh, it's
ATP
always
synthase, for example, it can only turn one way. It physically can't turn the opposite direction. How do you account for this?
Yeah, randomness doesn't play a part. When it comes to proteins, amino acids, there's 20 amino acids, and they can be ordered any which way, but the way that they're ordered, which amino acid comes next, etc., and the way that they fold because of the side chains, the little molecules on the side of the amino acid, which are able to bond better with some molecules than others, and the angle at which the amino acid turns. When an amino acid folds, when it bends, and it's bond with another to create as it creates the structure of a protein, they don't just bend 90 degrees straight down or something. They also have a twist to them. There's an angle, and you touched upon that. So the amino acid might fold downward, but it also might rotate to the left or to the right, and that angle is important because it determines, to some degree, the overall structure of the protein because of all the amino acids that come after it. See what I mean? So if a mutation occurs that changes, this is why when a mutation occurs that substitutes one amino acid for another in a sequence that codes for a protein, a genetic gene, you might call it, it can sometimes disrupt the final shape of the protein in such a way that the protein becomes less efficient or is useless, completely functionless, and causes disease. And this is the greatest cause of human disease, in fact, is protein code mutations. When you mess with the original design by changing the arrangement of proteins, amino acids in a protein, you're screwing with the final shape of the protein molecule when it compacts itself and squeezes all the water out of the inside, and it becomes nested in its final shape. The shape is different, sometimes a little bit, sometimes remarkable, but even if it's a small difference in shape, it will either reduce the functionality of the protein or make it utterly functionless. And this is the single greatest cause of human diseases. Almost all human diseases, except for cancer, are caused by mutations to protein codes, which screw up your biology. And so, how in the world first off, how does natural selection operate at the molecular level? Well, it doesn't. And so, how do random mutations acted upon by natural selection design the proteins that make functional organisms? It can't happen. See, this is one of the most profound evidences of design, that the specificity of all these amino acids and their exact location, their angle, their relationship to each other, to make a molecule, a macromolecule of such astonishing precision in its final form, that it matches the physical form of other specific proteins, so it interacts with it and has a function, is one of the most profound evidences of design. But people believe randomness, is involved, and it's not. I'm sorry, none of that is randomness.
Well, very, very true. And Sam, before I respond, did you have something you wanted to add?
Oh, no.
I was going to say, Neff, the only thing I would disagree with you on is that, I would agree that the majority of diseases that we, up until relatively recently, had identified all had to do with coding mutations. However, a huge portion of the new ones we're discovering are the result of mutations in the regulatory regions. And turning out that pretty much any mutation has a negative effect. And I think a good analogy for that would be, you could have, to continuate our construction concept, you can have run all of the wiring, but if the fuse gets blown, It doesn't matter if you still have all the wire and your light bulbs aren't blown.
Okay, so that's a good point, John. You're right about
that. If the fuse
that.
is gone, in this context, a promoter or whatever is blown, you're toast, right? And I'm not, Neff, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, like,
you're right.
Right,
you're right. I was pointing out that I guess the majority of mutations that have a function in producing something physical in the cell, produce the information. Whether it's RNA or DNA,
I was more pointing out for the audience of like
is mutations to amino codes, to protein codes. But you're right. A lot of diseases it's been discovered that a lot of diseases are caused by incorrect regulatory sequences that have been damaged by mutation that incorrectly regulate protein production. In fact, that's why I'm hyperglycemic, is because a gene that expresses a protein at the right level at the right time in my body is damaged, and I don't produce that protein the way I should normally. So your point is well taken. That's exactly right. Regulatory sequences are also the cause of tremendous number of human diseases.
And what I find funny about that is, like, the point that I was making does not in any way, shape, form, or fashion negate your point. It just exacerbates in my opinion, the incredible just incoherence of plausibility in relation to the evolutionary model. Of like, so you don't have the physical structure built without the appropriate sequence, and then you can't even have an attempt to build the physical structure if you don't have the appropriate regulatory components and the translation components. Like, you have nothing. Like, you're toast. And I think one of the things I find very entertaining about this, I don't know if you guys have followed, but and Sam, since you're in this arena, you may have seen this. Are you guys aware of the like full-scale 3D printing of houses and buildings that's going on?
Yes.
Around the world these days?
Yeah. In fact, HUD, the affordable housing, they're having their first 3D house printed. So hopefully, as that technology increases, affordable housing will be more available.
That absolutely. And to me, what I find so entertaining about it is, one, it's a very cool concept, and it's awesome application of technology. But I know over the last several years, I mean, there's been whole houses, like I'm talking about nice houses, have been 3D printed. They're doing it over in Europe pretty aggressively. Yeah. And I know it's happening in Asia as well, but the United States is kind of behind the times on the 3D printing of houses. But reason I'm bringing it up is, we've been talking about construction more from the traditional perspective of, putting everything up versus having the literally printing it from a 3D perspective, very similar to what our ribosomes are doing, right? Like, we are taking a 3D print file, running it through gigantic 3D printers. This concept, comparison, the analogy of ribosomes, and very often are 3D printing polypeptide chains, like different components of the house, which are then assembled into the end result of the functional protein, just like we're doing in biological systems. And what I find so ironic is I don't think there is a sane person on this planet that would ever argue that the design file, even if you had the design file, that the house would ever 3D print itself, nor even if you had the 3D printer, that the house would actually set all those components that are being printed could possibly assemble themselves without a minimum of very highly programmed robots, which obviously would be the end result of intelligent agents. Yeah. Nobody would ever make that argument, except they do in the context of our very existence, when it's not just like, categoric, not an appropriate categorical comparison. It's an error. It's not a real analogy. It's like, we're talking about direct comparison here, folks, except that with the one in the biological system is exponentially more advanced than 3D printing a house and putting it together.
Well, here's some interesting information. Of the 50,000 known mutations to protein codes in human genome associated with disease, 40,000 of them are caused by amino acid substitutions. So the single greatest cause of human disease is damage to protein codes. The secondary is caused to damage the sequences that regulate proteins. And the third is damage to sequences that we don't know what they do. So,
but Neff, but if it can reproduce, it's perfectly 100% fit.
that's so they say. Yeah, so they say, right?
No effect whatsoever. It's fine. We don't even need to talk about it.
Yeah. One of the greatest problems is that the protein codes are especially susceptible to mutations which are not corrected. And the reason for that is because the biology of a human being assumes that the protein code is correct more than it doesn't assume that it's not. It doesn't double check it for correction as much as it double checks the information that regulates everything.
Do you know how they go on about you using those analogies all the time? I just saw someone in the comments saying that. But you use those analogies. Well, it's funny because I watched Professor Dave run James Tour down for about 5 minutes on his analogies. And then he had one of his experts on, and the guy proceeded from the very beginning to use 3 different analogies with planes, houses, and cars. And you could see the sour look on Professor Dave's face. He's sitting there thinking, oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, mate. I can't believe he actually put that to air. And it just goes to show how biased and ridiculous the atheists are when they see that and they don't call him out on it.
No double standard there.
Well, I tell you, I watched it was let's see, it was the second half of June. There was a biomechanics conference all about the advancements and discoveries in protein nanomachines. And it was so funny watching these guys, these different experts from all over the world talking about it, and just how they're literal machines, mind-blowing stuff, just yada yada yada. And then I come back and I do engage in debates and conversations with YouTube idiots, and they're still clean. It's not really a machine.
I know.
How many times?
Because it's not made out of metal and parts. It's not a machine because it's not made out of metal and wires and plastic and stuff like that. They're idiots.
Well, I tell you, okay, so I still haven't gotten over this. In my debate with the actual socialist trash, I still can't get over that name. I asked him the direct question. I was like, so if a nanorobot is made out of chemicals and we make it, is it a nanorobot because it's made out of chemicals?
Right.
Or is it not? And he's like, no, it's just chemicals.
Yeah. I know. They attempt to reduce.
You know what you're talking about. Like, don't enter the arena if that's your response. You're a freaking moron, and you should not, never come out again.
Yeah, when the intelligent agent, Dr. Tour, and his team design a car using biological material, we can see that, right? An intelligent agent can design these things, but then if we suggest that maybe an intelligent agent was used from the beginning, I guess that's totally unreasonable.
Yeah, I've got a video of Ken Dill, who is one of the world's most prominent biologists, giving a TED Talk where he talks about this. I've shown it a number of times on my channel, where he talks about proteins, and he talks about them being machines. And he says repeatedly in this talk, he says, one of the things I want to impress upon you is that I'm not just using a term protein to describe something colloquially. They are literally machines. He says, I want you to get this. I want you to understand. They're not. We don't just use the term because it's fun. They are actually real machines. You need to understand that. And that's not a direct quote, but that's literally what he says. And he stresses that repeatedly. He wants you to understand. He wants the audience to understand. I'm not just using the term because it kind of fits. You need to understand. These things are machines. They perform machine functions. They literally are machines. And everybody knows rationally that a machine requires a designer.
I have a video, and it's with this molecular biologist, and it's not in regards to the origins debate. And he is making the statement that a cell is not analogous to a computer, that it is literally a computer, because they can take certain sequences out of another cell and insert it into, the said cell. The cell will read it like a computer, and it will perform the function like a computer. And he says the cell is a literal computer because it can do this. And so I don't understand how these people think that these processes can happen by nature when they have no example of these things happening, at least being created by nature.
Well, it boils down to a lot of this, a certain level of ignorance on the part of the typical layperson around the world. They because their mind has been filled with this spiel that evolution is true, and that natural chemistry, which is what they assume, even though they're not told that because what scientists are going to say natural chemistry directly is able to design that. They don't want to go there. They bounce them. They go around that. They go around, take the long road and say, but this is what they come to believe, that natural chemistry is able to organize matter in such a way that it becomes increasingly complex and produces functional, astonishing things. This is what the layperson of the world believes, because they've been taught this garbage in school, and they hear it on the internet, and they see it on TV, and it's a lie. And every chemist and every physicist in the world knows matter doesn't naturally organize itself towards complexity. They all know it. Every physicist, every chemist in the world knows the evolution theory contradicts what they do for a living every day. But the laypersons of the world, they're ignorant and naive, and they're complacent because they don't actually study whether or not this is really true. Is there any reason to believe this stuff? If they did, they'd find, hey, this contradicts the second and third laws of thermodynamics. This can't be true. How is it that we're told that matter has organized itself from dirt soup into Beethoven? I mean, and yet every chemist in the world says it's the hardest thing in the world for them to do is to build a molecule. Using all their intelligent design and technology, it's difficult for them to build a molecule, and yet they want you to believe that molecules naturally tend to click up like Lego bricks on steroids, magnetic Lego bricks, and just order themselves into stuff that's complex, increasing in complexity, and functional. And that's absolutely anti-science. It's non-science garbage. But the problem is, the typical layperson of the world doesn't know any better because they believe this stuff, but they don't follow the science. And think about it. How many people that go to college and get a degree actually get a degree in a biological or chemical or physics degree, right? And so that they would have the grounds for knowledge enough to say, oh, wait a minute, that's bunk. That contradicts everything I learned in college. But not many, because, 1 out of 10 students in university get a biological or physics degree. Everybody's getting degrees in all kinds of other stuff, and those don't have any specialized education or training in it. They blindly believe that molecules can organize themselves from dirt to Beethoven. And that's one of the critical things that creationists need to refute, is to help people understand this idea that matter naturally organizes itself into increasing complexity that makes functionality contradicts science. It's garbage. It can't be true. Therefore, evolution theory can't be true because it contradicts the laws of physics. We need to get that knowledge out to people so much.
Yeah, they have a worldview they're trying to protect. Nature had to do it. There can't be another option because there can't be a God who loves them, right?
Matter doesn't like being tinkered with. It doesn't like being ordered. It wants to do what it does, and it doesn't want to be forced into things. That's why people like James Tour, the world famous chemist we're all familiar with, right? Intelligent design proponent. He states outright. He says it's close to impossible to force molecules to do what you want them to do. They just resist. In making nano cars, which is one of the things he's done, the molecular machines made out of proteins, he says that's immensely technical and problematic. It takes an immense amount of work, lots of time, people with extreme knowledge and super high technology. It's difficult, and it often doesn't work. When you get it right, everybody in the room jumps and screams, "Yay, we did it!" This kind of thing. And they want us to believe, the evolutionists, that matter just naturally does that. Come on. What? Please.
Yeah, it happened under a rock.
Or worse, Sam, near a hydro vent down at the ocean floor, right? Where water is constantly in motion and molecules don't naturally collect and organize, right?
Yeah, good luck.
That's the worst sensation. That's the best scenario. They've moved towards claiming that evolution, the abiogenesis took place near a hydrothermal vent on the ocean floor, right? Where water is in incredibly varying temperatures and constantly in motion because there's a column of hot water shooting straight up. So you've got cold water being risen and drawn up towards the surface of the water, going upwards because of the hot water coming out of this pipe. And they want you to believe that in this high, velocity water torrent, somehow matter found a niche inside a teeny little hole inside a rock there, and matter collected and organized itself into itself. That's what they want you to believe. Isn't that amazing? In a volatile environment, matter organized itself, which the laws of physics say it doesn't do, into something outrageously complex. Unbelievable. If that's science, I'll shoot myself tonight. Seriously.
Yeah. Well, I like to, just as a joke, just dumb it all the way down to a cheesecake. Because a cheesecake, you have to take, cold milk, and you have to heat up the crust, and you have to mix the ingredients, then you have to put it in the oven in a pan of water, and then take it out, then you have to put it back in the fridge. It's fairly complicated in the world of making a cake, but it is nothing compared to making a cell. And so I say, is it reasonable to believe that nature could assemble a cheesecake? I know it's a silly analogy, but
no, actually, it's not. It's easier to make a cheesecake than it is to make a cell. So
correct.
Your point is well made.
And we understand that nature could never make a cheesecake. But then to turn around and think, well, there had to be able to, the first life had to be made somewhere on Earth.
Right.
Far more complex. Far more complex. Okay. Believe what you want, I guess, but don't tell me it's science, and don't tell me you don't have a faith-based position. Okay, the difference is their position it's just not rational. When you remove the intelligent baker making the cake, or the intelligent chemist with all of their purified chemicals and their cutting edge laboratories, it's just not reasonable. It's not a rational position to hold.
That's exactly right. The big problem for evolution is that evolution is an antiquated idea that has come up against modern 20th century and 21st century technology, and what evolutionists are clinging to and holding to and vehemently defending this antiquated idea against modern science. And modern science, whether they'll accept it or not, and they won't accept it, has absolutely and utterly refuted this antiquated pre-20th century idea that matter organized itself into, to all the life forms in this world. But we know today, because of 20th and 21st century science, that's just not possible. Matter does not do what it would have to do for Charles Darwin's idea to be true. for all life to have a common ancestry. Matter doesn't do that. We've discovered that. And so really what it boils down to is an antiquated idea that they ever increasingly cling to and fight vehemently for and defend against modern science. And the incredible contrast here is that the evolutionist claims that the evolutionist science in creationism is myth, when the truth is evolution is a myth and science supports creation. Modern science has shown us that creation is a fact, but the evolutionist claims that science shows that evolution is true, which is completely not true. And what it's resulted in is the evolutionists have had to use endless numbers of because of that, over the last 100 years, especially the last 40 or 50 or 60, evolutionists have had to resort to taking assumptions based upon the theory of evolution and transform them into science and declare them to be a fact in order to defend evolution. See? And that's what they do. So all their alleged claims of evolution, like mutation and natural selection, genetic similarities or homologous structures, comparative anatomy, these kinds of things, they take assumptions. That's where their whole argument lies now, is on assumptions, not science. But they declare that the assumptions are true with such vehemence and such declaration of fact, with authority and by people of authority in science, that people still swallow it and believe it, even though it's based on nothing more than an assumption. If creation were true, we would find tremendous similarities in various creatures because of the environment that God made for them and the environment that God made them to live in. That's not good enough to demonstrate evolution is true. The assumptions by comparative anatomy, genetic similarities, that's not good enough. Where's the fossil evidence? Where's the evidence for all the creatures walking the earth that show transition, that show anatomical features and homology changing, and so that they're moving towards becoming a fundamentally different creature? There isn't any. There isn't any in the fossils. There aren't any living. We don't know. We've learned by 90 years of study that mutation is a destroyer of genetic information, not a builder of it. That contradicts the evolution theory and Darwinism right there. So the list goes on and on, right? Pseudogenes, etc. Evolutionist junk DNA paradigm, destroyed. So what it boils down to is evolutionists promoting, because they have nothing science that supports their case. Remember, evolution was a myth that's been drawn all the way to the modern science era, and modern science has destroyed evolution. So what the evolutionist requires is for you to believe their assumptions of comparative analogy, homologous structures, etc., and genetic similarities. Phylogenetics is the big strong arm of evolution. That's what they really talk about constantly. Phylogenetics. Look, this creature has certain genetic similarity with that one over there. That proves they have a common ancestry. No, it doesn't. It proves only that they have a genetic similarity because they share a common environment. They would necessarily have to have one, right? So, but what it's resulted in is evolution today is promulgated by nothing more than an assumption declared to be scientific fact. And all the while, all the scientific evidence against natural selection and mutations and all these other things demonstrate evolution cannot be true. And the incredible evidences of intelligent design that we could talk about forever, in organisms, even down to the molecular level in a cell, right, destroy evolution theory. But the evolutionist doesn't talk about that, really. So they avoid that and carry on about what? Homologous structures, comparative anatomy, and genetic similarities, which they have formed into phylogenetics theory, right? And that's what they put forth. And they declare that to be true. And they tell college students and tell everybody on TV, this is the proof that evolution is true because this organism shares a certain genetic similarity to that one. And that proves their common ancestry. And it's all based on assumption. The evolutionists today, because evolution was a myth, moved into the modern era of science, is stuck with putting forth evolution assumptions as declaring them to be scientific fact and doing it with eloquence and with authority and with people who were authorities in science to make the layperson who knows no better to believe it. That's all evolution theory is today.
Regarding this abiogenesis problem that they face, let's just grant them, for the sake of argument, that they can find some magical assembly process in nature, okay? I don't know.
Hold on a second, Sam. Hold on. So Jerry says, we should address this. Jerry says, would it be good for God to make mosquitoes? Only female mosquitoes suck blood. Males don't. What do they eat? It's not blood. So, in the beginning, all mosquitoes did not eat blood. Okay, I'm sorry, Sam. Go ahead. I just thought that was worth addressing.
Yeah. So let's just, for the sake of argument, let's grant them this magical element arranging machine in nature. Okay, their vent. How does that necessarily grant the life element, right? It's more than just the simple arrangement or assembly of these molecules. That doesn't grant them life. If that were the case, then I could give them a cell that's already assembled, everything already in place that died just a fraction of a second ago. Can they bring that back to life? So my point is I would suggest that it's more than just the assembly. Congratulations, you have all of these molecules. They've all been assembled, but that doesn't grant you the life element. And that just grants you a dead assembled cell.
I agree. Sam, you touched upon something very interesting there. I think you're completely right. I think for the chemist, this is a very weird sort of a subject that you've touched upon. But I think you're completely right, Sam. I think for the biology to function, there has to be life present first. Then the biology will do what it's going to do. I agree with that. I think spirit is necessary for the biology to operate. Without the presence of spirit, it's my personal opinion, that without the presence of spirit, the biology will not function that organizes. Like you said, Sam, you could produce a cell with everything perfectly in place, and will it naturally, chemically, completely operate and function and go on normally? And I say no. I agree with you. I think it will not. I think that the presence of the life force of a human spirit is necessary for the chemistry to operate. If it's not there, the chemistry simply won't function. It dies. It stops. This is one of the greatest mysteries of what life is and what God has done, the Creator has done, when He created dualistic beings, which are made of flesh and spirit. I agree with you on that completely. I think for biochemistry in any organism to exist requires that life is present, with one exception. The Bible tells us plants don't have life, and yet their chemistry operates. But they don't have biochemistry.
Well, it's still a guided. It's still a guided process.
But it's
a guided process. Yeah.
Yeah, it's different. It's not biochemistry. Bio meaning life. It's not life chemistry. It's non-life chemistry that makes a plant operate. But compare the biology of a tree or a white weed or a tulip to the biology of a human being, and although the plant is astonishingly complex, what you find is the organism that's a mammal or a reptile or a bird or some other animal is much more biologically complex than the plant. And that complexity, the difference in complexity, I think requires the presence of spirit. And if it's not there, it won't happen. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I don't know how that would be wrong. If it was simply the assembly, then I think that would complicate the question of, what exactly is death, right? How can something die then if it's just simply the arrangement of these molecules? If it was just the arrangement, then why would things die at all? Right?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about this apoptosis. That's how somebody
Right.
responded
That's
to this question.
programmed cell deaths. Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of a process. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
So that's yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about. I've never really considered a tree, but do seeds last forever? Even seeds don't last forever. There is still like an allotment of time, I would say, right, before those things break down to the point where they won't grow and sprout.
Yeah.
And even so, some things can be, some plants, like cactus, for example, and even starfish. Those are pretty interesting. You can chop them up, and they'll grow, right? But then there's other things that you can chop off. I don't know. It's something interesting.
The Creator is incredible. One of the interesting things about seeds is you can plant a seed in the earth, put it 4 or 5 inches down, cover it with soil, and pack it down with your hand, and then add a little water. And when that thing sprouts, where does the sprout that comes out of that seed go? Upward.
Yeah.
Even if it comes out of the seed at a downward angle or from the side, it turns and moves upwards towards the sun to come up out of the earth. How come it doesn't just randomly go off in some wackanut, direction in the soil and then fail and die? Because it was designed by the Creator on the molecular level to be able to tell which direction the sun is and which direction the gravity of the earth is pulling. So I need to go the opposite direction of the preponderance of gravity, because that's where I'll get light and I can live. And that cell makes those tissues grow upwards out of the soil every single time. It's amazing. This is design. If it was randomness involved, one out of so many seeds would actually function because it would just happen to go upward. But not true. Every seed you plant in the ground, you could take peas, green pea, and take a green dehydrated pea and plant it in the ground 10,000 times. And every single time, it's going to turn and go straight up towards the sun. Every single time. That's design. The mechanism at the molecular level for that to operate, for it to detect the direction that it must grow in accordance with the gravity of this planet, to grow the opposite direction, was something imparted to the seed by the designer in the beginning. Else it would never happen. This is incredible evidence for design.
I agree. I don't know how they can look at it and come to a different conclusion if they're not running from God, right? I think that the rational thinker would understand that this is a complicated process that was designed from the molecular level up.
Yeah, I see people running from God all the time, man.
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's to me, it's a bizarre thing, really, that somebody would want desperately for God not to be true. I find that so desperate, so crazy,
Yeah, so we have these big satellite dishes that shoot these numerical sequences out into the cosmos, right? And we're hoping that we can pick up a signal. But if the signal that we pick up, they'd be looking for like a prime number sequence or something that had some type of irregularity to it, and that's how we would detect like an intelligent source, right? So we understand this when it comes to looking for extraterrestrial life. But when we see these same signals and these same sequences at a genetic level, then we do a full 180, right? And then we deny the intelligent agent was ever there. You see the inconsistency? if we found these sequences that we see in a molecular level, if we found these sequences coming from space, these series of numerical sequences, then we would understand that we have detected an intelligence out there. Does that make sense?
Oh, hang on. Oh, is he? Oh, yeah, I'm unmuted. Neff must
Yeah, you're
have.
good.
He might have fallen asleep. Sorry, I was sorry. I was just talking to someone about the date palm seeds in the chat, and you were talking to Neff. He might have fallen asleep. He might have. It's getting late over there. What time is it? It's getting pretty late.
Yeah, well, I've only got a few more minutes.
Oh, no.
I was hoping somebody would join, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no. I don't think anybody is going to join. But what we should do is, I would like them to join so they could ask questions and we could answer their questions live. Or what we could do is we could just go through the chat and answer questions from the chat. Or if you want to keep talking about retroviruses and all these different whatever you're talking about, go right ahead. Keep talking about it. I don't mind. I don't care. I'll sit here for as long as you want. So what do you want to do? Do you want to talk about it, or do you want to?
I've only got a few more.
Oh, you've only got a few more minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I could just go through and answer some questions from the chat, and then just drop out. If you want to go, just go. That's fine.
Hey, well, it was great talking to you guys.
Yeah, because
it's good to see you.
These conversations. Yeah, you too. All right, you guys. Yeah. Have a great weekend.
Okay, good night. God bless.
Take care, Sam.
All right. Bye.
Take care, mate. All right. Yeah, so what was that question? Why does a good Neff, you could, oh no, you're probably too tired. If you're too tired, doesn't matter, I'll answer it. But why does a good God create mosquitoes? I love these questions. I could go on for
Well, the answer is that mosquitoes didn't suck blood in the beginning. They sucked fruit juices. And the female mosquitoes are the only ones that suck blood today. So the males
and it's
don't.
Not to them. It's not to nourish them. It's to nourish their eggs. By the way, the sucking of the blood.
Yeah. So it's an adaptation based upon a fall. God's creation has fallen, and the creatures have fallen. They've taken on behaviors which they were never intended to. And so mosquitoes, female only mosquitoes, suck blood. It's probably due to an adaptation that has caused them to require more protein than they normally do. And so now their intelligent design, their incredibly designed features, cause them to seek out a higher source of protein than they normally would need, which would be blood. Is obviously higher in protein than fruit juice. So God didn't design mosquitoes to suck blood. All parasite activity is a result of a fallen world, not design. But the evolutionist needs to explain to us how the features of parasites came into being by evolution. That they can't do. So they're quick to jump on a fake idea and claim this is an argument against design, while being completely unable to explain to us how what they're talking about could have been designed by evolution to begin with. Funny that.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the other one? I don't know. People start asking questions and we can answer them.
They love to ask us questions they can't themselves answer. That's what I'm pointing out.
Oh, yeah.
Where did the parasitism come from? Well, evolutionists or creationists can explain. You explain that with evolution now. Oh, well, I don't know. The scientists know. No, yeah. See, that's what we get. The evolutionist wants to ask you a question, expect you to answer it, thinking you're going to trip up. You don't have a good one. But then they can't explain it with their evolution theory themselves. So it's very hypocritical when they ask these questions because they don't have any answers.
Yeah, and another thing I just wanted to answer quickly. They found 2,000-year-old date palm seeds in Israel, and a couple of them sprouted. And now those seeds are almost mature. They went extinct around the time of Jesus Christ.
I read something about that about a couple of years ago. Yeah,
and
It's
not
been
just
around
that,
for a
Neff.
while.
Not just that. It's just I'll just say this point quickly, and then you can elaborate because you're better at it than me. But I love listening to your answers. And anyway, in my garden, I got a garden out there. 2 years ago, I just left my tomato vines there at the end of the season in winter, and I just let them all rot and fall down into the ground. And then I just turned the soil over after I ripped them out and mixed all the seeds in. So now every single time I turn the soil over in the vegetable garden, right, the ones that are deep down, and the thing is, people have to remember here is that it's a wet climate. The ground is sopping wet for like 9 months or 10 months or 11 months of the year sometimes.
Wow.
At least 9 months of the year. So the
Crazy.
ground's sopping wet. They're in sopping wet ground. They're in about a foot deep of soil. And then they get turned over and they get to the right depth where obviously the warmth of the sun can hit them and they sprout. And obviously if they do manage to sprout in winter, which they
Now,
often do,
what is it,
they die.
Jason?
So
What
I'm saying is during the flood, there would have been hundreds of trillions of seeds. There would have been trillions of seeds destroyed
countless
during
trillions.
the flood, but there would have been other trillions that would have survived. And seeing every time I turn that soil over in my garden, I see grass seeds sprouting from buried seeds that were there years earlier. And I haven't put grass in that garden for about 4 years, and I've still got grass seeds sprouting, and grass doesn't get anywhere near it. So that's what I'm saying is they always wonder how, because God didn't let Noah out of the ark for a certain amount of time after the flood. So obviously in that time, I know from my own grass seed sprouting here that would have given the grasses time to grow and sprout. So when he let the animals out, the ground would have been solid enough and all that sort of stuff, but also for the plants to grow. So in that 50-something days, there would be enough feed there to feed those animals and then some. I mean, well, yeah. Sorry.
That's interesting. What is it that you're talking about in your own yard that grows when the soil gets tilled?
Tomato seeds and grass seeds. Grass seeds have not got on that garden for at least, now get this, Neff, for at least 4 or 5 years. So there's grass seeds in my vegetable garden buried down deep because I turn it over and mix, lots of, organic matter in and stuff like that. So there's seeds that are buried down really deep.
Well, grass grows by roots
that have been
there
for 4 or 5 years, and every time I turn the soil over, they're still sprouting. Now I know grass seeds can blow in, but it's not that. Because it's when I turn it, they grow, not before. And also I've got tomato seeds from 2 years ago that are in sopping wet soil, like at least 9, sometimes 11 months of the year here, the ground's wet, sopping wet. So they're in sopping wet soil because they're not at the right depth to sprout and there's not the right conditions, they won't sprout. They'll just stay there. So those seeds in the flood that were being churned up in the mud, the ones that didn't get ground up into paste and crushed would have still been there mixed in to the mud. And the ones at the right depth, which would have been hundreds of millions of billions, would have sprouted within those days after the flood. And that's also says to me that the water was fresh back then. Oh, well, okay, 56 days, you just get a bit of rain, wash the salt away. The salt would wash away, even if the water was salt back then. But I think it was fresh. I think it was fresh, though.
Yes.
And so I've got from my own evidence here, because I used to always wonder how God must have supernaturally made things grow after the flood. Well, no, he didn't. He actually didn't. Because how many days was it? 56 days or something. He was told to stay in the ark. Well, that would have given those seeds. Now, if I turn over my soil in the right conditions in spring and summer, and allow those grass seeds will sprout very quickly, and in 56 days it'll be like 2 feet high. Yeah. So when they came off the ark, the whole earth, all the land, dry land, could have been covered in 2 foot high of grass. So that'd be enough to feed, hundreds of millions of billions of animals. And there was only a few on the ark. So they would have flourished. They would have absolutely flourished. And that's before predation fully kicked in and started. So there wouldn't have been predators around back then. So they really would have got a chance to flourish before everything started to get really corrupted. And, and I mean, and people say, well, sharp teeth. Well, look at fruit bats. Everything ate plants. Well, we'll look at fruit bats. Fruit bats have got a mouthful of razor sharp teeth. They look like the most savage. If you showed just a picture of a fruit bat's teeth and nothing else, every single person you showed it to would think that was a carnivore, and yet it eats fruit and stuff like that. Or maybe I think a few bugs, but 99% of its diet is fruit, or 95% of its diet is plant matter. So there you go, people.
So that's a good point. I mean, the flood would have buried countless trillions of seeds in the sediments that were deposited by the flood. And, secular scientists had acknowledged that the Earth was globally tropical at one point in the past. That means in the Arctic or in Antarctic, it was warm, lush, green environment covered with greenage, foliage everywhere. And warm, like 80 something and 90 degrees temperature and reasonable humidity everywhere on the Earth. There were no polar ice caps. What's under Greenland, what's under the Arctic and Antarctic, it wasn't ice then. It was all lush. There would be ferns and conifer trees growing. It was globally tropical.
I'm really glad you brought that up. Remind me later.
This is what scientists admit. Now, this would be, according to the creationists, the pre-flood world, right? Where the world was lush, very lush, profuse with plant life and animal life, and was a beautiful, idyllic environment for life to live. The temperature, the humidity was perfect for organic life on this planet. So the secular scientists have discovered the pre-flood world, basically. So now imagine a world utterly profuse with plant life, just everywhere, all manner of diversity of plant life, then being wiped out with a flood. The result would be countless trillions of seeds of all manner of plants being deposited in the sedimentary strata that were laid down by the flood of Noah. So when Noah gets off the ark, it's hardly any time at all between the time he gets off the ark and 3 months later, the earth is green again, already green. Now, there wouldn't be trees because trees grow much slower. It would take a lifetime or more, human generation or so or more, for there to be any reasonable sized trees on the earth again after the flood.
The seeds that were deep down in the geological
every other kind of plant, bush, shrub, grass, flowers, weeds, fruit, all kinds of shrubs and vines, all that stuff would have been profuse across the earth within a year, 2, 3 years after the flood of Noah. It's only the trees, the things that grow slow and take a long time to get big, that would take much more time after that. But it wouldn't take any time at all. After Noah gets off the ark, within a year or two, the earth is covered with green
berries.
Everywhere.
There would have been berries everywhere. Berries and vines and grass and
Absolutely, because the number of seeds that would have been buried in the sediments from an idyllic environment, pre-flood world, profuse with life, would have been in the countless trillions. Yes.
Or it could have been a supernatural event, but also the seeds deeper down in the geological column, if you can't see them there fossilized, which maybe they do, maybe they just don't look for them. Maybe they have found them and they just ignore them because it might go against their narrative. I don't know. But all I know is when they're deeper down in the column, that the pressure would crush them flat and they wouldn't fossilize real well, I'd imagine, but the pressure would crush them flat. But that'd be interesting to have a look in the upper layers to see if, or even in the lower layer, deeper down layers, see if they can identify seed buried in those layers, because there would have been a lot crushed. Because you got to remember that stuff, the lower down layers, they were at one stage they were all churning and tumbling with rocks and grounds and boulders. It was like a grinding machine. I used to work in a tile shop where they actually ground down old porcelain tiles back into paste and then dried it out, turn it into dust and powderized it again. And they used to do it in a tumbling machine with ceramic balls, and it'd tumble around gently and gently just grind it up into within no time at all. So I can only imagine when you go down so deep with so much pressure and so much churning that only the top layer would have survived. The top layers of seeds would have survived. So I'd love to test that hypothesis out. And actually, I'm going to start.
Well, if they're buried too deep in the earth, they can't sprout and get sunlight. So
yeah, but it would have fossilized.
But the upper, strata of the earth, Here, okay. So when the flood occurred, today we have what's called topsoil all over the earth, right? Where did the topsoil come from? Okay, so because below the topsoil are sedimentary strata. The topsoil is not a sedimentary strata. It's a layer. It's not a sedimentary strata. Where did all the topsoil come from? This is a great problem for the evolutionists. It's not a problem for the creationists. It's a problem for the uniformitarianists. Why is there topsoil layer anywhere from an inch thick to numerous inches thick all over the whole earth? It's this. This is the answer. Okay, because as the water subsided from the earth during the flood, and most of the sedimentary strata had already been created, the waters that were still above the sedimentary strata that had already been formed were dirty, had dirty water, countless tons of sediment in it, which settled out. And that settles out to form a layer of what now we call topsoil. See? Now there's a difference between soil and dirt. Dirt is nothing but ground up rock material. That's what it is. It's the same materials that make rock. Soil is different than rock, than dirt. Dirt has very little or it's any biological material in it. Soil is a mixture of the rock stuff with ground up plants and animal material, mostly plant, the vast majority being plant. And it's biological and earth and rock combined. So topsoil is ground up massive amounts of plant material mixed with rock material. Where did that come from if there wasn't a flood? You see my point? So at the end stage of the flood, the ground up plant material, which was ground into bits, really fine dust-like stuff, mixed with rock material, it was in the waters, settled out and became compacted because of the waters receding, resulting in what's called the topsoil of the entire planet. If there was no Noahic flood, there would be no topsoil on the earth. But everywhere is covered with topsoil. See, this is one of the truest proofs of the flood of Noah. If the uniformitarianists were true, there could be no such thing as topsoil. It would be rock. That's all there would ever be. Right.
And even the rock would have eroded away in most places, because not all rock is super hard rock that only erodes away 1 millimeter every 1,000 years. You know
right.
I mean?
There wouldn't even be deep layers
most
of
rock
dirt.
will erode away very quickly. Like Ayers Rock is eroding away. They say it's Ayers Rock in Australia. It's a big national monument rock thing, but formation. But they say it's wearing away because people walking on it. Well, that's not true. It's still wearing away because of it's out in the desert and winds blow and sand blows against it, gets sandblasted, and it wears it away because it's sandstone, and it erodes. It's eroding very, very quickly, and it hardly rains out there either. So it's eroding at an enormously fast rate. This massive giant rock called Ayers Rock, AYER. Rock Australia. Yes. Just Google Ayers Rock Australia, and it's eroding enormously fast. I'm sure they'd even have figures on its erosion rates if you looked it up. And if you could look at those erosion rates, and that's in a place where it hardly gets any rain. I've lived there.
Well, interesting. I never thought about the erosion rate of Ayers Rock. I know I'm familiar with that rock. It's massive and it's curled over, it's bowed, but I never really thought about the erosion rate of it. Scientists have documented the erosion rate of it, you're saying?
I would say, I don't know, but I would say yes, of course they would have, because it's an Aboriginal sacred site. So,
naturally, if you did, you would find that it's too fast for uniformitarianism.
Oh, way too fast. And that's the thing. I already know it's eroding, because the Aboriginals were complaining that it was eroding because of people walking on it. And they were wearing the rock away, and not just that, they're fools, because it wasn't just people walking on it weren't doing very much. What does the most of the erosion, and I lived there, so I know this, is that it's right in the open flat plains of a desert with sand around everywhere. What happens when the wind blows? The rock gets sandblasted, and it's sandstone rock. It's sedimentary sandstone rock. So, and it's hard rock too, and it's wearing away at an enormously fast rate in an area where there's no almost bugger all rain. I mean, you can stay there for a year and maybe
Well,
see
it's
one
eroding
day
at
of
a
rain.
rate too fast for uniformitarianism.
Way
to
too
be true.
fast.
That's for sure. Yeah.
But of course they blame it on people walking on it, but that's not true, because I know from fact obviously I've lived here all my life. I'm Australian, so I remember them talking about wind erosion years ago when I was a little kid, and how it's wearing away the rock and all this sort of stuff. But you don't hear them talk about that stuff anymore, because they were naive back then. They didn't realize
the erosion rates. Yeah, they killed uniformitarianism. They're all on the mountains of Italy, in the Alps in Italy. There's deep sediments, numerous meters thick, numerous meters. Sometimes it's 2 or 3, in some places 20, 30, 40 meters thick. If uniformitarianism were true and those mountains were 40 million years old, there couldn't be any sediments on top of them. The erosion would have taken away all the dirt, the soil. It's soil, not dirt now. It's soil. Remember, soil is a mixture of ground up biological matter, almost exclusively plant material, and rock, right? And that's dirt is minus the plant material, right? So topsoil is ground up biological matter mixed with dirt, with rock, with dirt, right? So, but on the Alps in Italy, on the top of them are shelves, literally, of soil, not dirt, but soil, and it's meters thick, many meters thick sometimes. If those mountains have existed for 40 million years, there couldn't be any sediments on top of them. Erosion would have taken away all of that. In fact, it would have taken away the entire mountain. See, but evolutionists don't think about this kind of thing. There can't be multiple meters of soil on the top of these Alps if they're 40 million years old. Erosion would have taken every single inch of that off. It'd be gone. There couldn't be any of that. So
there's that much soil.
Yeah. So what it boils down to is the rates of erosion reported by mainstream geologists, environmental geologists who measure erosion rates, right? They'll measure erosion rates and they'll report it in their journals, and they'll say this is the rate, right? But then at the end, they'll say, well, evolution has somehow added more. What? What are you talking about? Where'd it come from? Are you out of your mind? There's no way to add this stuff. It can't happen. So they can't admit that the rate of erosion tells us those mountains cannot be 40 million years old. They can't even be 2 million years old, because there's multiple meters of soil on top of them, right? But they can't say that because they're kicking. They're losing their job if they do that, right? So
yeah.
Excuse me, I got gas. Must be what I ate. But so they can't admit that the rate of erosion tells us that the uniformitarianists' belief about time can't be true. They can't admit that the mountains can't be X old because erosion hasn't taken away all the sediments, right? They have to come up with some fantastical, ridiculous, pseudo-scientific fantasy idea that somehow the erosion wasn't very severe for that part of the earth. Erosion, it plays the game of picking and choosing, right? Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but it's also rocks are different hardnesses as well, and they erode at different rates. But even if the evolutionists were right and say, okay, well, this rock here wouldn't have eroded away because it would have. Okay, well, fair enough. Okay, let's give you the rock. Let's say the rock's there a billion years later, or 2 billion years, or 3 billion years later, like some of the Australian continents said to be nearly 3 billion years old, right? So the rock's been there for 3 billion years. It's gonna anyway. It's sure if you just give them that rock that didn't erode away, that super hard rock, well, where is everything going to live? Where's all the land? All the land's gone. You know what I mean? Most of it would be below the ocean. Most of it, you might get the odd, super hard. What do they call quartzite? Mountains that would survive. But the Earth, there'd be almost no land. The Earth would be uninhabitable. It'd be a water world basically. It'd be like Waterworld.
Right.
And yeah, it just would have eroded away. So okay, so let's give them this, their hard, the really hard layers and stuff. That's not going to help them. There's not going to be nothing's going to be able to survive on that. It's below sea level in a lot of cases. It's going to erode down to below sea level, and the stuff that doesn't erode would be uninhabitable.
Yeah. It only gets worse for them. For example, in those same Italian Alps, there's numerous feet of dolomite, a very specific type of rock, on top of the Italian Alps. And scientists have attempted to create dolomite, to try to find out how this rock, they're always studying rocks and trying to figure out how one particular rock was formed and another formed and another formed, right? They want to know that stuff. So they've tried to figure out in the laboratory setting how dolomite is formed, right? And they've tried numerous experiments over the last 40 years to create dolomite. And guess what? The results have been they've been able to produce minuscule amounts of dolomite over periods of months with extreme amounts of money and hard effort. Minuscule amounts. So in other words, they're left with wondering, we haven't a clue how in the world this much dolomite was ever made, because our best science shows us we can't create it in the laboratory with all our attempts and all our techniques and all our theories. We're not able to make it at such a rate that it's possible for there to be all that dolomite on the Alps in Italy. There's numerous feet of dolomite there. And they can't make it. They make a couple of centimeters, and they say, that's the best we can do, and they say it's not enough. So where did all that dolomite come from? Well, if the flood of Noah was true and catastrophic geological, chemical events were taking place during the flood of Noah, that's a potential explanation for why we have numerous feet of dolomite on top of the Alps in Italy, right? But the uniformitarianists are showing us that natural chemistry doesn't see, even if they accelerate it with man's best technology, is not able to make enough dolomite to explain the amount of dolomite on the mountains in Italy. See what I mean? So the flood is a better explanation because our cataclysmic geologic event with its very complex, high temperatures, incredible complexity, that could explain it. But they're admitting that their long-term geological effects of uniformitarianism can't explain all this dolomite. So that's another evidence that the flood of Noah is a fact, because catastrophism might be able to explain massive amounts of dolomite being made in the earth in a brief period of time, but the secular camp can't explain it with all their technology in the laboratory.
Oh yeah, no, that's it's the I think they've. Did you hear about the stuff where they've worked out how the granite could have formed and also could have formed and but also that there's the YEC looking at granite is that granite can form in just a couple of thousand years sort of thing. It could possibly form naturally in a couple of thousand years. I read the citations on that. And
what could form? I'm sorry, Jason. What was it?
Granite.
Granite. Oh yeah, granite. No, the formation of granite is a mystery. Secular scientists do not know how granite formed. They admit they do not know how granite forms. They don't.
Yeah.
They'll say, now you might see a science paper or website say, we think granite formed by this way, but that's a website. You go to the science papers and ask the scientists how granite formed, and the secular scientists who study geology will admit that the formation of granite is still a mystery. That's
but they have got some small amount of evidence, like very small amount to show that it could form this way. I saw the citation that I was reading was on Answers. One of the ones I was reading was on Answers in Genesis. And they were saying about how, like if granite was to form, that it could form this way and it could form in just 1,000 or 2,000 years. sort of thing, and or a few thousand years, if it did form. And they did have a mechanism and a way that it could form, and they've got a theory on that. And
they always have theories.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, it also could be that God formed it himself and created it, and it was an instant thing, and it didn't need all these different processes. You know what I mean? Like,
I think granite formed naturally, but I
think it went through the processes, but at super accelerated speed with God.
I think that granite was probably formed in the beginning by creation
In minutes.
In seconds. Yeah.
In seconds, yeah.
And radio halos,
Super accelerated.
polonium 218 radio halos give evidence of that. So now why do we have granite on the surface of the earth? Well, because of the flood of Noah, which geologically, disturbed the entire geomorphology of the planet. It caused materials from deep in the earth to be pushed up, and some on the surface of the earth be pushed down into the earth. This would result in granites, which were probably originally created below the surface of the earth, to be shoved up to the surface of the earth. Now we have granite protruding from the surface of the earth because of the Noahic flood. That's what I think. So somebody's asking me a comment. Jesus is Lord is asking me a comment. Let me go back and find it. Reply to my comment. I'm looking up. What is your comment? Let me look up and see. I'm not seeing it. I don't see it. Could you ask if you have a question or something? Could you ask it again? I don't see it. I scrolled up and I didn't see it. Anyway, ask it again if you can. If you have a comment or a question, make it again, please, because I don't see it when I scroll upward. I don't see your name.
Yeah, I've been looking for you. I can't find it either.
Oh, hey, buddy. How's it going?
Hey, good.
Man, you are a powerhouse, dude. You just, you live for doing this stuff. I know. It's amazing. I don't know how you have such lifestyle, but dadgummit, man. This guy lives for making creationist videos. It's unbelievable. Anyway, I got to run to the restroom. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right.
Yep. Yeah, I was trying to find out. I was trying to work out what he's asking there, but I can't find it anyway.
Yeah, do you remember what it was, or did it just got spammed off the screen? Because it could be at the top, but I don't see it anymore.
Yeah, no, it's not there. Oh well. Let me see. I can't remember what Neff was talking about before he left because I was too busy trying to look for comments and concentrating on typing. So I wanted to carry on what he was saying. Yeah, but I suppose, I mean, no, ask the comment. Take your time. We're not going to be rushing off anytime soon. So
You forgot what it was. It was so long ago.
Yeah, that's all right. That happens. I've got a terrible memory. But yeah, was there anything you wanted to talk about, Matt? No.
I was sorry, I was replying to a cryptocurrency thing. I'm like, don't buy Shiba Inu right now, man. That's the downtrend is too much. But
yeah.
Yeah, I guess tomorrow's going to be fun. We are going to be going through a 30-minute video that all they do is talk trash about young Earth creation. And he's a
Cool.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be fun.
Are you doing that on Standing for Truth?
Yeah, and then I'm going to premiere.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's going to be there first, and then I'll premiere it there, and then take it and copy it and put it right on this channel, because we have a different audience, you know. People that don't go there, they just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, geez, whatever. Yeah, it's Jesus. It doesn't matter if there's only one person in the chat or 20. It says if two gather in my name, I shall be there, or something like that, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
who cares how many there is? So yeah, it's good. So yeah, go watch Standing for Truth. And Matt destroy them tomorrow on Standing for Truth's channel.
Hey, Neff. You're
Hey,
back.
man.
Hang on, I'll get Standing for Truth's link, because sometimes if you've never been to Standing for Truth's channel before and you try to search Standing for Truth, it just comes up. They bury him because he's a Christian, like 100,000 down the feed sort of thing. So unless you've actually been there a few times, it won't come up in the search. So, or your friends have been there or something with your algorithm. It's bad like that. Let me see. I'll get his.
I heard Neff talk about plutonium halos, and
Yes,
so I found a great.
that's what.
I just drew
The
down.
Answers in Genesis did a whole lot of stuff on that recently. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I went more farther back in the archives, back to 1970 when they first discovered giant halos, and I thought that would be good for everybody to see because they're very unique. Giant halos are a lot different, so I thought it would be pretty cool for people to see. So I threw down the thing for people that like the science on it. It's only about 3 or 4 pages. It's very short. It's a report that they did when they first discovered them. And
I'll be back in just a moment.
okay.
Okay.
And they're a combination of thorium and uranium. So pretty neat, actually, looking at the pictures that they took of these things.
Yeah. I'm just going to put Standing for Truth's channel link. He dropped out. It doesn't matter about the kid. No one cares about the kid in the background.
I'm just in the habit of doing it now.
Oh, hang on. Oh, that's what I did. What a silly thing to do. I accidentally. Sorry, that's all right. You couldn't hear it anyway. Just another video was playing. That's dude, I should have said what it was. Standing for Truth. Oh, damn it. And yes. Okay. All right. Now, what was I going to say? I can't remember what I was going to. I was going to answer someone on something in the chat. No.
Back.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't. I totally. I didn't want to start off on something else, Neff, because you were on a talking about something, and I couldn't remember what you were talking about because I was so busy concentrating on
I don't
the chat
care.
section. So I didn't start anything else. Yeah. But you keep going on with what you were saying. No. Am I? Yes, I'm coming up. Okay. All right. Well, let me have a look. I just noticed something that I wanted to. I should have been prepared, but I wasn't prepared because of the because I was too busy concentrating on the. Oh yeah, we already did that one. Oh yeah, that's one thing I don't know. I already talked about this, but it doesn't hurt to mention it again. And we're so deep into the chat. We're 2 hours into the chat, into the video. It's I just want people to check it out. I'll post the link in the chat now. Oh, hang on. Wait a minute. Copy link. And there, Jacob's Flock. I encourage you to have a look at that doc if you haven't seen it already. It's I love that doc because one of the things that the evolutionists come up with is that why the Bible's ridiculous is how that Jacob put sheep and lambs and sheep and grew up in front of straight stripes, like straight sticks, which is basically like looking at stripes all their life. And or like and then he put them in places where they were looking at a mottled color, or there was mottled color there, and the sheep came out with ring straight with stripes, and that looked at the straight poles, and the ones that looked at this other thing came out with. Well, anyway, they tried this out. They actually did it. They got the sheep and they put them in an area where they could see stripes, and sure enough, the young eventually started coming out with stripes on them. So it is actually scientific evidence to back that up. That's one of my favorite things it's one of my favorite thing. And also, what was I going to say? Hang on. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, yes. This is what I want to talk about. Okay, this is what I want to say. Carbon-14 is 0.04% of the atmosphere. 97% of that 0.04% atmospheric carbon is natural, like from volcanoes, etc. Only 3% of that 0.04% of atmospheric carbon has been produced. Sorry, Manef, did you want to say something?
No.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
No, I didn't say anything.
But if you want to, go ahead, man. I'll just stop. I can go on with this at any time, because I've got this written down. So
No, I was just listening to you.
Okay. All right. And in human history, volcanoes put out most of the carbon into the atmosphere. Like literally, volcanoes put out most of the carbon is literally only 0.04% of our atmosphere, and 97% of that 0.04% of atmospheric carbon is put there by natural causes. Now, you let that sink in. Only 3% of 0.04%, which is 400 parts per million, 400 ppm, right, of carbon in the atmosphere. 3%. 3% of that 0.04% is all humans have put in all of human history. So it's an absolute lie. Okay, you've got the natural carbon in our atmosphere. I suppose we could put corks in all the volcano vents, and that would stop carbon going in. I suppose that'd be a good idea. We could do that. Global warming is an excuse to tax us and raise the cost of our living astronomically. Most scientists do not even know this stuff. I've actually got a video here. It's called Nothing Bad About Increasing Carbon Dioxide, Professor William Harper. And I've got that video there. I'll post it in the chat after I finish with this. Anyway, we are currently at 400 parts per million of carbon. Plants grow best at about 1400 parts per million of carbon, right? If carbon drops to 200 parts per million, some plants will even start to suffocate in that. I mean, plants need carbon to survive. They also emit carbon and they need oxygen as well, but they need mostly carbon. So you start to reduce the carbon. I say to people, go get an enclosed area and like a controlled environment where you can lower the carbon to 200 ppm, right? 200 parts per million. And like they say that's the goal of the environmentalists. And you grow all different types of plants in there. So we have one room with tropical plants, one with cold weather plants, one room with whatever, with temperate plants, and you go through there and you lower the carbon down that low, and then see how much the plants struggle for one, right? And with their natural environment and the natural amount of food they get out of their environment, some plants will die out. So if we reduce carbon too much, we could actually damage the environment. And so that's one thing that I put forward, and that's true. And another thing about global warming, global warming is because of cloud cover rates, right? El Nino and La Nina, and like depending on how much cloud cover or not either one of those produces, So if you have like years where you get a lot of cloud cover around the Earth, like all year, then the global temperature starts to drop really quickly. And also, if you have areas obviously with no cloud, it goes up. But you've got sunspots. When a sunspot's facing towards the Earth, less heat is coming from the sun towards the Earth. So the Earth actually cools. And the oceans are so vast and deep that it takes 800 years for a temperature change to show up. So if they say that because of weather events that are happening in the past 300 to 400 years, they've got these weather events that like in the past, say 100 years or so, right? We say that global warming's out of control because of us, or a couple of 100 years. Well, it takes 800 years for it to show up in the ocean. So if they're saying the oceans are warming up, they're lying. They're outright lying.
But what caused an end to the Ice Age is the end of the mechanism that caused it to get cold. That ended.
And that was caused cloud cover, because you think of all the volcanic
that was caused by the flood of Noah.
Would have been put in the atmosphere.
Well, here's a nutshell of what happened during the flood. The earth cracked open. Massive amounts of water flooded the earth. It took time, months, maybe a couple of months, for the continents to be completely inundated and washed over. Then for the next several months, the continents were washed this way and left and that way and the other way, resulting in all kinds of stratification, resulting in the geologic column. And then the flood came to an end. The mechanisms for the movement of the water came to an end, and the dirt that was the materials, the ground up plant matter and rock in the waters that was in the waters settled out to create topsoil. The waters evaded the continents, flooded down, because the continents, the ocean floor sank where the water had come out, left vacant space inside the earth. That vacant space was filled by gravity, which sucked the ocean floor down. You can prove this by examining the coastlines of all the continental shelves of the earth. There's tremendous striations, which are the product of massive amounts of water currents flowing off the continents at the end stage of the Noahic flood. So the ocean floor sank. The oceans became twice as deep as they were before the flood. That's where the flood waters went. Now, during the flood, massive amounts of water were ejected from the earth during this, from the crevasse, into the upper atmosphere of the earth, moving at supersonic velocity, and became super viscous. In other words, it had virtually no viscosity. It just became, when water moves at supersonic speed, it loses its viscosity. In other words, it becomes super slick, ultra slick, almost like gas. And it shot out of the earth into the upper atmosphere of the earth, above the atmosphere, above the stratosphere, and it collected and it became ice. And this ice came bearing down upon the earth as snow and ice balls, covering the continents, especially in the north and south, because of the gravity of the earth, the gravitational poles of the earth, drawn towards it, because it had minerals in it, and laid down ice like the other world has never seen before. A ice snowstorm like the earth has never seen. And part of the reason for that was that the waters that ejected from the earth were hot. They were warm, very warm. And much of it filled the oceans of the earth and raising the ocean temperatures significantly. So now you have massive amounts of volcanic activity taking place on the earth because the continents are being shoved apart at high speed, opening up tremendous volumes of geological activity, which caused massive amounts of volcanoes, thousands of volcanoes to erupt from the earth, spewing volcanic ash into the sky, which blackened the sky, shutting out the atmosphere, sunlight. It became dark like night across the whole earth during the flood, Noah. Okay, so no sunlight and massive amounts of hot water in the oceans. This hot water in the oceans evaporates It moves upwards toward the upper atmosphere of the Earth, which is ice cold because the sun has been blocked out by ash, which is making the sky dark, black as night. Now, it gets cold and condenses and becomes snow. See, so the hot waters in the earth that poured out during the Noahic flood, evaporating into a dark sky, which is nearly black but ice cold in the upper atmosphere, converts that an immense amount of evaporating water into snow, and the earth experiences a snowstorm like it never has before and never will ever again. A truly massive snowstorm, which resulted in the ice caps that we have on the earth today. That's where the ice age. That was the ice age. So it was the flood of Noah that caused the ice age. Incredibly warm water evaporating up into a blackened sky where it becomes absolutely cold, freezing cold, turning into snow that bared down upon the earth again. It became heavier because it collected into snow bits, hail, sleet, and mostly snowflakes, which are heavier than the water molecules because it takes numerous water molecules to make a snowflake. See, became heavier than their evaporation state, and sank, and became snowstorm. So the Earth experienced a snowstorm of unbelievable proportions. And that's what caused the Ice Age. There was only been one. It was caused by the flood of Noah. There'll never be another. There's not been global ice ages periodically every thousands, so many thousands, 10,000s, or a couple 100,000 years, like the secular camp believes. There's no such thing. There was only one, and was caused by the flood of Noah, by evaporation, turning into snow, and coming down upon the earth in unbelievable proportions. That's what caused the Ice Age. So that's how we have an Ice Age. And it froze creatures so fast, some of them, that there are mammoths frozen, that we have a mammoth that's frozen so quickly. In fact, it's in a climbing position. The animal is attempting to climb upwards with its legs. It is frozen dead. It still has flowers in its mouth and in its stomach that are undigested. In other words, this mammoth, which weighs tons, was frozen solid all the way to its core so fast that its stomach didn't have time to break down and digest the flowers in its stomach. That's how fast that animal froze from the outside to the inside, all the way through like rock. Right? That's incredible. That means that animal was buried in snow and ice at such an incredible rate that was so cold. It was like space touching down upon the earth, literally ice freezing it. That's what happened to this animal. It was buried in ice so fast that the whole animal died, and its organs came to a rock solid ice, and so fast that it couldn't digest the flowers that were in its stomach, which was filled with acid. It should break down a flower in a matter of an hour or less, possibly 2, 3 at most, right? But this still fully formed flowers in its stomach have been found in this frozen mammoth, right? And flowers in its mouth. So it's walking around grazing, eating grass and flowers, and here comes a snowstorm like it had never seen before. And before that mammoth, the last 8 hours of its life were spent struggling to climb out of snow that was coming down at a rate of probably 1 foot per hour. That's how fast and thick the snow was getting. And this animal literally died trying to climb out of snow in a climbing position. Its front legs are up in the air and its back legs are down on the ground. The animal's literally trying to climb out and got so cold it couldn't fight anymore, and died in that position. I could show you a photograph of it, but I don't have it on my computer. You can look it up, you'll find it. This animal still has undigested flowers in its stomach and mouth, meaning it died so fast its stomach couldn't digest the flowers, which should only take at a maximum an hour to 3 before it would break and dissolve them. Unbelievable. That's how fast and thick the snow came down, that a mammoth died in less time than it takes its stomach to digest a flower. It's amazing evidence for the flood of Noah. Uh-oh, Matt's got some pictures. Should have figured.
Yeah, I love that story. But what did he call him? Beleshnikov? Beleshnikov?
Matt, you got a picture of this very mammoth that was found with these flowers in its stomach and mouth?
Yeah, that's the smaller one right here that I'm showing, laying down. They found most of the contents, I think.
I've got a doc on mammoths, so I'm going to actually post the link. Hang on, sorry. Oh.
Yeah, this is the guy.
Oh, it's a baby mammoth.
This one, yeah. This was the most preserved one. They have other mammoths, of course, but this one was found with food still perfectly preserved in its intestines. Tropical, by the way. Pretty interesting. I'll try to find out what exactly food was in its stomach. Food in its mouth. Let's see what they say. We found food still in its mouth. Its death occurred very quickly. Food found half chewed, still in the back of its mouth. Back teeth.
They found insect eggs and also larvae and all preserved and everything, mate, like seeds, and they could identify certain species, and it was incredible. And it would normally take like 48 hours or 72 hours, even if you put them in 20 below freezer, for it to freeze, and everything would have turned to liquid and digested within no time. But after like, this thing would have had to have frozen solid. I think, how long was it, Matt? It was, I don't remember. It would have, like, was it only an hour or something? It would have had to have frozen solid, or within 20 minutes or something. I can't remember. For that food to not have been broken down in its stomach. It's freaking incredible. I mean, that is just insane cold, colder than anything we could get on the earth anywhere, even in the coldest part of Antarctica. Crazy cold.
Yeah, and they said that this happened in autumn, right here in the article. It died in autumn.
And they know that it was a tropical climate where the mammoths live, because they found tropical plant species. That's right. They found tropical plant species, and they found insect larvae living in the gut that only live in tropical areas. That's right. I remember now. Yeah. So I mean, that's there you go. Mammoths and okay, people say that mammoths didn't have wool; they had hair. And chimpanzees have hair, and where do they live? In the hottest places on earth. So having hair doesn't mean anything. They didn't have fur or wool; they had just hair. Like, their hair wasn't enough to keep them warm. So this was. Sorry, Matt. Yeah, go on, mate. You know more about this.
So how long does it take for a mammoth to digest a flower so that it breaks down? It's not recognizable as flour.
Only in just hours, like
a couple of hours, right?
Not long. Yeah.
So, I mean, if we find a fully formed flower in the gut of a mammoth, we know that thing died in less time than it took for its stomach to digest it. See, that thing died fast, and it was found in ice. That means the ice that buried it fast. The thing was buried in multiple feet of ice that came down on it in hours, in less than an hour, probably less than an hour. It's unbelievable. There's an even better fossil. I don't think you showed it. I was checking on my cat. She was hacking. I think she had a hairball or something. But I don't think you showed this, Matt. But there is an actual mammoth that was found in the climbing position. That is astonishing. It died as it was climbing. I don't know if you've seen these. Pictures of these are available on Dr. Walt Brown's website, talking about the hydroplate theory. Amazing animal. Frozen mammoth in the climbing position. It's trying to climb out upwards in its front legs to get out of something, and its back legs are down lower than its front legs, and it died in that position in ice. I mean, that means the ice that came bearing down on that creature came bearing down in huge numbers in multiple feet in a matter of a couple of hours at the most. And there's so much of it so fast.
But that would have insulated him.
Couldn't survive.
They actually said that amount of snow should have insulated the animal, but so that it had to be something else that froze it. Like because of the conditions of Noah's flood, it brought down upper atmosphere cold, which is like 200 below zero or something.
It just demonstrates that the Earth experienced a snowstorm like never has been experienced before, where multiple feet of snow bear down on the Earth in rapid time, in an hour or two at the most, enough snow to cover a 6-foot man in an hour, right?
Yeah, but
that's an unbelievable process.
It is.
Uniformitarianism doesn't explain such snowfalls. There aren't such snowfalls on the Earth today. That kind of snow rate explains, it's explained only by catastrophism.
Snowfall like that in the tropics is more to the point, because the larvae they found in the stomach said that he had to have lived in the tropics, and the plant species they found in the stomach said the animal had to have lived in the tropics. So no, you don't find snow that deep in the tropics. No, you don't. And ever, when has ever in all of recorded time have we ever seen the tropics snow where it's 6 feet deep? You know what I mean? And it's not, it also says in that Brian Nichols thing on that channel, that hydroplate theory thing, it says that the snow that came down would have buried it, would have actually insulated it and made it freeze slower. So it had to have frozen from certain processes. I can't remember the processes. I wish I was more up to date on the doc, but I haven't got it.
Snow today doesn't build up at that rate on a horizontal flat ground. It can build up in the corner of a building where wind is moving the snow that's coming down heavy in a blizzard. But on open ground, you won't get 6 or 8 feet of snow in an hour anywhere on the Earth ever.
Yeah, there's 2,000.
Not today.
But in Antarctica there's 2,800 billion tons of snow falls on Antarctica every year. 2,000.
Yeah, but not 6 feet worth in an hour or two. It's just not.
I don't know, but all I know is that whether that would be their comeback, but the other comeback to that is why did, if that's the case, and they lived in a cold climate, why did they find tropical, not temperate, cold climate species, but these species could not live in, say, somewhere like Tasmania? You know what I mean? Even though it's not cold here.
They found
these things were tropical species of larvae living in the gut. So, and these are the same species they find in animals today, but they only survive in the tropics. They don't survive in the cold areas. So they know for certain that it's not, or maybe it's a hypothesis or a theory. It's certain the woolly mammoths grew up in a tropical environment. They don't think they know.
The problem only gets worse for them, because they found a sauropod dinosaur fossil on top of a mountain in the Antarctic about 6 or 8 years ago. A sauropod dinosaur is one that has flat feet like an elephant.
Yeah, so they just pushed the
time scale back. These are the big dinosaurs that they varied in size. There were smaller sauropod dinosaurs that weighed 2.5, 3 tons. There were big ones that weighed 40, 60, 80 tons. Right, or more. So, but even if you had one that weighed only 10 or 20 tons or 10 tons, it's a flat foot. It's got a flat foot like an elephant, because the animal is designed to walk on flat ground. Okay, so it's not a mountain climbing creature. So how do they find a sauropod dinosaur fossil on top of a mountain in the Antarctica, where the temperature is outrageously cold. It's like 40, 50, 60, 70 degrees below zero up there. And they found a sauropod dinosaur fossil there. Okay. So now here's two potential explanations. Since the uniformitarianist agrees that the Earth was globally tropical at one point in the past, when that mountain formed, that sauropod dinosaur in the tropical Earth had died on it and was pushed up, okay, as it rose with the dinosaur in it. Okay, that's the best explanation. Okay, the only other explanation is that the sauropod dinosaur died on top of the mountain. That's not going to be true because sauropod dinosaurs don't climb mountains, right? So the mountain was pushed up with the sauropod dinosaur in it, but he was buried in it. See? So here's the crazy thing for the uniformitarianists. The sedimentary strata which buried that monster, buried it on top of materials that became a mountain. Now you've got two processes. You've got heavy sedimentation that buried a dinosaur on top of a mountain completely uplifting with the sedimentary strata. The best explanation for that is the flood of Noah.
Zane says his own personal echo chamber. Anyway. Yeah, you keep going, Neff. Whenever you're talking, it might seem rude that when you stop talking that I don't follow on from what you're saying. I'm sorry, because you know how bad my memory is anyway. And I've always, because of all the drinking that I've done. And and I'm also concentrating on the chat so much. So I concentrate on the chat and I just, everything else goes over my head.
When I stop talking, it's time for anybody to talk about anything. I don't care what you talk about.
No, I just want to let you know that often that when
you
you ask me a question, you'll say, "Oh, what do you?" No, you'll say, "What do you think about that?" And I'll go, "Huh? What?"
No, I don't say what do you think about that.
No, but if you did, and I go, "Huh? What?" Then it's because I'm focusing on the chat. I'm terrible like that.
Sure.
When I focus wholly on one thing, and I can't focus on
spewing ideas. That's all. Anybody's willing to think about
things. I used to be able to focus on more than one thing at once. I used to be able to.
You still there, Matt?
Oh yeah.
Not these days.
Yep.
But yeah, so I mean, I've got all the stats for the. I just gave everybody the stats and all the information on that mammoth, how it got buried, why they know it came from a tropical climate. Everything was in that doc. Everything. So actually, Neff, you might want to get that doc, and because that's written directly from the hydroplate theory directly. So, and I copied basically, Brian Nichols made that series on hydroplate theory. I actually copied word for word what Brian Nichols said, plus I added in all the links and everything.
Yeah, I think
the references and everything.
I think the hydroplate theory is probably a pretty accurate explanation.
It's got all the links there and all everything. So it's got everything there for you. So if you want to add that into your stuff, go right ahead, because I've got no copyright on anything I do, and I take it from other people
read about
anyway.
I've read the hydroplate theory website, and I a long time ago. And I didn't find anything about it that I find questionable. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm the greatest authority or anything. I'm just saying I don't see anything wrong with it. I think that the hydroplate theory is probably the very best explanation for what happened on the Earth during the flood. He has really gone through all the geological processes of the Earth that would have occurred during the hydroplate theory and shown with actual physics why the features of the Earth are the way they are because of the flood. I think he's done the best job any scientist ever has for explaining physically the flood of Noah and the events that took place during the flood. I think the hydroplate theory is correct.
Because I'm busy doing some other stuff at the moment. Post a link to your channel so people can find your channel and sub to you.
Let's see here. Okay. Give me a minute. I think that link works. Yeah, it does.
You were saying, Neff.
I was just saying that I think that the hydroplate theory is the best explanation of the geologic events that took place during the Noahic flood. And it's very well researched, and it's highly detailed. And I think it explains the geomorphology of the planet, why we have the features we do today, and it's all explainable by the flood. The uniformitarianism can't explain it, that's for sure. The idea of slow deposition and slow erosion, all this stuff, you can't explain the features of this planet. Only catastrophic event could explain it. Catastrophism.
Yeah.
But you know, the controversy over catastrophism versus uniformitarianism is an old argument. It's actually been going on since the early 1800s. There were actually Christian bishops who debated uniformitarianists like Charles Lyell and stuff in the early to mid 1800s about this, publicly debated them in churches on this matter. It was a hot topic in the early to mid 1800s, which was true. You know, the biblical account that the earth is 6,000 years old in the flood of Noah, or uniformitarianism, whereas the earth, they believed then, was tens of thousands of years old. That's all, just tens of thousands. That was all. They keep increasing the age of the earth exponentially. You know, in 1830, they thought the age of the earth was like 50 or 60,000 years old. You know, 1860, a couple of decades fewer, it's a couple hundred thousands of years old to a million or two. And then by 1900, it's numerous millions of years old. By 1940, it's hundreds of millions of years old. You see, they keep increasing the age, right? But in the early to mid 1800s, 1820 to 1855, 60, they argued that the earth was, you know, the uniformitarianists argued the earth was 40 to 240,000 years old. That's all, maybe 250,000, half million years old, most. That's how old they thought the earth was. But, you know, fast forward 40 more years, late 1800s, they thought the earth was several million years old. See, they keep increasing. By early 1900s, they thought the earth was 1 billion years old. See, they keep increasing it dramatically, right? And so, but in the early to mid 1800s, there were Christian bishops debating uniformitarianists like Charles Lyell and other people in church, inside a church, on the age of the earth. And the minister would be arguing for the age of the earth according to the scriptures and say the earth is 6,000 to 6,500 years old according to God's word. And the bishop and the uniformitarianist would be saying, you're full of crap. Science shows the earth is actually 65,000 years old. You can't possibly be right. See? And now from 50 or 65, 70,000 years old, 100,000 years old, they jump in 40 years to hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of years old in Charles Lyell's day. Then to, by the turn of the 20th century, millions of years old. That's how they've continuously increased the age of the earth based on their assumptions and their crazy paradigm. But in the early 1800s, they thought it was only tens to a couple of 100,000 years old. Depends on whose opinion you get, right? But they were debating that subject publicly in churches in the early to mid 1800s, 1830s, 20s, 30s, 40s. They were debating that subject hotly. So this is not a new argument. It's not a new fight. It's been around a long time. Long time. In fact, here's how dastardly the evolutionists are. Charles Lyell actually contacted a writer, a secular leftist writer for the New York Times. And he got him to write an article about a recent debate between himself, I think it was, and an English minister. I can't remember. His name was Lord something or other, I think. And he got him to write an article painting the creationist as an idiot and a buffooner for the purpose of swaying public opinion. And instead of saying, look, you write what you think is true, he said, this is what I want you to write. I want you to write that the Christian minister that I debated is a buffoon, and he's wrong because modern science has refuted his antiquated ideas. And that's what he did. And it was just for the purpose of propagating, it was making propaganda. That's how evolutionists worked back then. Charles Lyell and his kind is to promote propaganda. He made a deal with a secular news writer, I believe it was either Chicago Sun-Times or the New York Post, I don't remember which, to write an article that berates the Christian worldview about the age of the earth, so that after the debate, there would be an article in a major newspaper which claims that science has proven the age of the earth is vastly older than what the Bible says, just for the point of swaying the public opinion. That's what he did. Isn't that amazing? That's the secular camp. Don't rely on the science. Just make them believe what we believe. That's their way.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty bad that they basically we can't talk about stuff. I mean, look. I can't say it. You can't say anyway. I'm not talking about it. There's certain things you can't talk about. The video will come down. I want to, but anyway. We're just dumb rock apes as far as Google's concerned, and we can't talk about certain things. We're not smart enough and intelligent enough to discern between stuff for ourselves. So
I got one,
put stuff.
Anyway, I just screenshotted it for you. Let me share my screen. You're gonna love this statement. This was in a book trying to be derogatory to young Earth creation, and they put here in yellow, "It is not a dinosaur." Talking about this art drawing they found over here. It is
I love these,
because we know that dinosaurs were extinct 12 million years before man appeared on the earth. Let that sink in.
Yeah, they know it's not a dinosaur because dinosaurs didn't exist. But if they look at that picture, they really know that it looks like a dinosaur, right?
Right, and now
that's the freaking stupid irony of that.
Yeah, and then now it's 65 million. Here it's 12. That's how much they've changed it since they wrote this book.
Yeah. All right.
Oh,
yeah.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
They say dinosaurs were extinct 12 million years before man, and now they claim 65 million years.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Well,
they keep changing. Yeah.
Matt, could you show that picture of the one that just show the sequence of pictures and explain it just quickly? The one where they say that it's not a picture of, it's a drawing of a snake and something else. It's that one. The one on the rock where you have to climb down on a ladder, all this way to. Yeah. I can't remember the name of it.
That's all right. I know where it's at. I have a lot of videos now, but it's down here.
No, not the video. The doc where it shows the photos. You could show the photos on the screen of how they debunk it and how they show that they say it's not a dinosaur, but it's this and that, and then they show it's just and they say the legs are just a water smudge. Remember, and I know stuff like that. That doc. That it find that where that is in that doc and show that doc and just go through that and show people that. That's really embarrassing. Like that
is true. That's
embarrassing for them. Extremely.
I'm trying to
remember the name of it.
I might have to just go to my old video because I could find it faster here.
Yes. Okay. All right.
I will.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm like that too. You've got so many hundreds of docs that it's, you know, and probably tens of thousands of pages that it's hard to remember everything.
Exactly. So here's what he's talking about. Here's the Brontosaurus. And here's they said, oh, that's not a Brontosaurus because it's just stains in the rock. It's clearly this stupid looking, weird looking thing here, which is ironic because they show
someone drew a snake and then that thing behind it drew something else and so on. And it's just a conglomeration of a whole lot of pictures that appears as though it's a dinosaur. It's not really a dinosaur. Yeah.
It's funny too, because look at this weird little circle they draw for its head. And then when you look here, you can see the thing smiling with its eye. It's like, you guys can't even get the head right. That was the first stupid thing. And then some guy went up there.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
He traced it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he literally went to the site and he said, well, let's find out if it is. So he went up there and he literally traced the drawing, and look at how clear it is.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that is a dinosaur.
Oh, it's a total dinosaur.
Oh, absolutely, dinosaur.
And it's because of the rock pecking marks. When they draw those dinosaurs, they use a very sharp piece of bone to chip away at the sandstone, and it's very hard sandstone, but the bone's a little bit harder, and they just chip away and they make these little pock marks. The whole dinosaur, wherever that dinosaur drawing is, there's these tiny little pock marks, and you can tell it's one drawing because of all those pock marks. Basically, that's the part I wanted to just skip to straight away, because they try to say that it's all this rubbish about it's all these different pictures, and then but even where the legs are, where they say it's just a water stain, there's those pock marks drawing out the legs. You know what I mean? It may have eroded a little bit over the years, but you can still clearly see the pock marks defining the entire picture. Forget that this is the nail in the coffin. In the rock.
There's a second one. Remember?
Yeah.
So, right here.
Yeah, I'm letting you get to that one.
Dinosaur is what destroys them. There's another one.
They're fighting. That's why the dinosaur's in a weird position. That's why this one here, you look at its tail and you think, oh, that tail's in a weird position. Yeah, it's getting ready to swing its tail around and whip it around to whip it against the other dinosaur that it's fighting against. So these Indians witnessed two dinosaurs fighting. Now you can see why they are so desperate to and each one of those dinosaurs, you see where that line is that they've drawn around the dinosaur. That's obviously someone's drawn that, right? But there's the pock marking. That pock marking that Matt just showed then, if you could go back, that pock marking doesn't matter. I know it's hard to find. It doesn't matter. Yeah, that pock marking there is made by sharp bones. That's how Indians draw stuff. And so what did the Indians see? Did the Indians see a pile of bones on the ground that say got eroded away in a local flood? And they saw those bones and they went, oh, look, we're going to draw two of these dinosaurs in perfect, fighting sequence, and in perfect proportions, and just from seeing the bones, when they couldn't even get, remember the early attempts at trying to work out what dinosaurs look like from the bones when they actually drew them? They looked ridiculous. It was laughable. And then later on, they got the bones and they put them together, and it looks, then you go, oh, okay, now I can see the early ones. You just burst out laughing.
Yeah, in the 19th century, scientists.
So how did the Indians draw that? Is what I'm saying.
What dinosaurs look like. Modern paleontology, anthropology is what revealed the actual shape of dinosaurs.
Yeah, but even though they had all the bones together in a skeleton, they still couldn't get it right what it looked like. They still messed it up. Or they had all the bones. So if modern man back in the 1800s had all the bones in the 1800s and they had them all together and they couldn't work out what it looked like, then how did Indians draw that picture on that rock? And we just established that those pictures are drawn because they've got those little chip marks from the very sharp bone tip in every part of that, where you see where the line's drawn around the outside of those dinosaurs. Well, inside that line is the pock marks perfectly, marking out that. And over the years, it's eroded a bit to make it look a little bit more you know, so not so clear or harder to see because it's got the desert varnish over the top and all that sort of stuff. So that just proves that dinosaurs live with man. And those Indians saw dinosaurs fighting, and they drew two dinosaurs in battle, mate. Two sauropods. Can you imagine what a spectacle that would have been to see two sauropods in battle? I mean, that inspired that person to climb up on that rock and draw that picture in a spot where where it would be hard for anybody to get to it to erase it. And that person wanted that picture to last.
Yeah, what's funny to me is that
reason.
Dinosaurs have to claim that a stain also made those legs as well. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Hey, screen share me. Matt. I'll show you something. I'll be real brief about that. In fact, so here we got Freddy the dinosaur, right? Freddy the dinosaur, a little cartoon, right? So would anybody look at this picture and not know that that's Freddy the dinosaur? Of course not. Everybody would look at that and say, oh, that's Freddy the dinosaur, right? A 3-year-old would know, a 20-year-old would know, a 50-year-old would know. That's Freddy the dinosaur. So now let's superimpose Freddy the dinosaur on some rock. Look, now we've got Freddy the dinosaur on some rock. Freddy the dinosaur has been drawn on a rock. But now wait a minute. Let's remove Freddy the dinosaur and just look at the rock. It's still Freddy the dinosaur. Because that's exactly what the Native Americans actually drew, was Freddy the dinosaur. In other words, it's not your imagination that makes this look like a dinosaur. It's because they actually drew a dinosaur. Let me go back over that real quick, just so you understand. So you don't misunderstand the simplicity of your stupidity if you think this creature carved on the rock is not a dinosaur. Here's Freddy the dinosaur. Here's Freddy the dinosaur superimposed on rock. Now we take Freddy the dinosaur superimposed on the rock away and look at the rock, and we still see Freddy the dinosaur. Because that's what the Native Americans drew. A dinosaur. A sauropod dinosaur. A giant sauropod dinosaur. And if that's not enough, the ancient Babylonians and Egyptians did the same thing. Here's one called Lusitanian. It is a gigantic crested skull dinosaur, sauropod, and the Egyptians and Babylonians depicted these creatures with their necks entwined. If that's not a dinosaur, what the heck is it? Right? Here's another Babylonian one. This is a cylinder seal. It's got two Lusitanians, depicted with their necks entwined. That's just an artistic depiction. It might also depict that they pitted these creatures against each other to bet on them. We don't know for sure. Probably not. But anyway, it's an artistic. I mean, I'm not going to go through this. I'm going to stop sharing. I just wanted to make that point that if you take that Native American, and we've heard the atheist evolutionists say so many times, oh, that picture is not a dinosaur. It's just some weird, on the rock. Yes, it is. It's quite clearly a dinosaur. Everybody who looks at it knows it's a depiction of a dinosaur. And when you hear people argue it's not, you're hearing people who are deeply in denial because their worldview doesn't allow them to agree with the truth.
Am I on? Yes, I'm unmuted. Yeah, Matt, are you there? It doesn't matter if you're busy. It doesn't matter, man.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just sent you a. Oh, hang on. I better send it by email because it's easier for you that way. I forgot. Yeah, and oops. Okay, and paste and send. There, it's got no subject on it, but the first 3 pictures in that doc, could you show them for me? Neff's going to love this. Neff, this will give the Neff something to talk about, I can tell you. You know how they say that they don't find human bones in the fossil record? Well, okay, they actually do find human bones in the fossil record. Okay, have a look at that. If you can't zoom in on those pictures, can you? Like that middle one. That's
Yeah,
why I got you to do it.
I'll do it.
And then there's one more picture further down later, but just take your time. It's no rush. You see that? That is a fossil. That is a fossil. What is it? What sort of bone is it? Foot bone. That's all. Okay. I can't remember the actual name of it, but it doesn't matter. It's a fossilized foot bone, right? Now, they say that one at the below is from Australopithecus afarensis. Well, the one above is from a modern human, and the one below is supposed to be from Australopithecus afarensis. And I've checked out the bones in apes' feet, and they are different. This is, if you have a really close look at this picture, you can see that this is a human bone that's fossilized, that they've just basically found it and gone, oh, we threw this in with them, but other people have seen it. Oh, we better make up a story that Lucy had human feet. You know what I mean? And then, so they do find human bones in the fossil record. I think a lot of them get thrown away if they find them because they're just such God haters.
Well, the interesting thing would be to show a modern ape's finger bone and compare that to human.
Yeah, well, I've actually done that. I've compared those. That's why I did that doc. But there's one further down that shows that a foot bone, right, compared to a human foot bone, like a foot bone. The foot bones. There we go. Those foot bones there that they found in the fossil record. They compared those. Now, if you have a really close look at that picture. If you can get into that original doc, which I'll post the link to that doc in a minute, it's called the Jason Theory. It's pretty easy to get into. You can have a look yourself. That I've checked it, I've looked at it, I've studied it, I've been right over it. That is a human foot. On the right hand side is the picture of human foot bones. On the left hand side, obviously it's a little bit deformed, but I've compared that with ape foot bones and stuff. No, it doesn't match. The ape below it is the ape foot bone. Right, and if you look at it, the human one above, you can tell that's human. You can just see it. Look at the bones, man. That is a human foot that they found. So what do they say? They make up some story that it came off Homo habilis or something. You know, like they're finding human. They're actually finding pieces of human. There's evidence right there that they're finding fossilized humans in the fossil record, and yet they make up these stories and these lies about, you know.
Yeah, chimpanzees don't have 2 feet and 2 hands. They have 4 feet.
And at the same token, they hardly ever find any ape bones. They think they found one tooth or something, I think it is.
I mean, they have 4 hands. They don't have feet. Chimpanzees don't have feet. They have 4 hands.
No, I'm talking about the fossils of fossils of apes.
Have long heels, but they don't have 4 hands. They don't have. They don't have any feet. A chimpanzee has 4 hands.
Yeah. But you can clearly see that's a human foot that's fossilized in the fossil record, and that Australopithecus bone that they say it's just a human foot bone. It's just a modern.
I've been in debate with evolutionists before, and they mentioned the chimpanzee's feet, and they say, "Look at the feet of the chimpanzee," and I say, "What feet?" And they say, well, the rear feet of the chimpanzee. Chimpanzees don't have feet. They have 4 hands. They don't have 4 feet. They have 2 hands. They're short at the front, and 2 hands that are long at the back with long palms. They don't have 4 feet. They don't have feet at all. Chimpanzees don't have feet. They have hands. Their rear, what people call feet, are not feet. They're hands. They walk on 4 hands.
And what they'll say is that Australopithecus has opposable toe, big toe, doesn't stick out, is not as opposable, doesn't stick out as opposable as, say, the modern chimpanzees, right? It was just an extinct species of ape, but it did stick out enough where you'd be able to tell the difference between a modern human foot or a modern human foot bone in one instance that's older, and then one that's older that they say it comes from. They're just making up stories as they go. It's just there's extinct species of ape. There's only two. I think they've only found in the fossil record of all the chimp bones that they've found. I think they've only found a tooth or something. I think they've only just found like 2 or 3 bones, like a couple of little fragments of chimp bone in the fossil record. Yeah. So they've actually found more in the fossil record showing that humans are around than they found of chimps.
I've got a famous
they
quote.
Say there's no evidence.
Yeah. I got a quote somewhere from a famous paleontologist who says you could pack all the bones of man's ancestors into a shoebox.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I think
I don't remember who
it's
it
a suitcase.
But he said, well, no, this one says shoebox. This was about a 75-year-old quote, 70-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
Probably 1940s or 50s. But he's saying you could take all the alleged ancestor bones of mankind and put them in a giant, a good old shoebox. That's how many we got. We don't have nothing. But even if we had lots more today, the point is that to make that statement in the time, in the 1950s or 40s, demonstrates that, paleontologists were very active back then. I mean, they were doing the same thing that they're doing today, right? If man had a precursor and evolution had proceeded, and man had this ancestor and that one before it and that one before it, there should be so many examples. We would need truckloads to hold all the fossils, right? So even stating that in the 1950s or 40s demonstrates evolution is just nonsense, because even at that time, with all the fossils, the hundreds of millions of fossils that have been recovered from the earth, if there were really any evidence that man evolved from an ancestor, we should have so much evidence you couldn't possibly put it in a shoebox. That's why that scientist said that. He's saying, look, with all the hundreds of millions of fossils we've dug up out of the earth already, look, it's 1948, for crying out loud, right? We've been doing this 100 years. We have enough fossils that you could call evolutionary transition to man. We can put them in a shoebox. That statement demonstrates evolution is irrational, because if that were true, I mean, if he was wrong, it would only be because there were an enormous amount of fossil evidence for man at that time. And he's explaining there just isn't. We can put it all in a shoebox. That means if evolution were true, it should have produced massive more evidence of this than enough to fill a shoebox. See? So that scientist is completely correct, even though that statement was made 50, 60, 75 years ago. He's completely right. If evolution had been true, there should be far more fossils that lead man into backwards in time to some ape-like thing that we couldn't possibly begin to fit them in a shoebox.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I think today it's up to a suitcase or something like that. You can fit all the bones that they make all these stories about and all these pictures and stuff, in a box. Also, there's the hang on. I just got to get a link. Oh no, I don't. No, I don't. I've got to find something. Hang on. I was just there and I went past it. There's also this thing about. Hang on, let me find it. Draco. There it is. What's this? This is a Draco Rex. Okay, so what they did with Draco Rex is that they've got these 3. Oh, damn it! They've got these 3 different types of dinosaur. Hang on. Let me see if I can enlarge this.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
They've
got. Hang on.
I'm going to have to kill out of here, guys. I got to go. I'm tired.
Okay. God bless you.
You guys have a good one, man. Thanks for allowing me to be a part of this live stream.
Thanks for
and Jason, you take care of yourself, buddy.
Yeah,
Matt, if you're still there, You guys
Yeah,
have
you
a
think
good
he's
evening.
just
I
busy with
gotta
his
kick
kid
out.
or he's asleep or something?
I'm ready to crash. I gotta go, man. I'm tired.
Getting late where you are too. Good night, man. God
Good
bless.
night,
Have
guys.
a good night.
Have a good evening. God bless.
Okay, see ya. Okay. I'm just going to say a couple of quick things and then I'm going to go. Let me find it. Okay. Oh, man. Pachycephalosaurus, I think it is. I can barely read it because it's very grainy and I can't enlarge it at the moment. Pachycephalosaurus stigmoloch, and Dracorex. They say that they're different species of dinosaur. Well, they've actually discovered that they're not different species of dinosaur, or there's a large amount of evidence to show that they're not an extinct species of dinosaur, that the Pachycephalosaurus, Pachycephalosaurus, the Stygimoloch, and Dracorex, they say are three separate dinosaurs. Well, they're not, because what they actually found was when they looked at the dinosaur. Cut a long story short, when bone is a young bone is growing, like say from a baby to an adult, or from a young child to an adult, you get this, while the bone's growing really fast, you get this porous layer in the bone. And so, when you see that porous layer, it doesn't always show up like in fossils, because it can be filled in, that porous layer, and can just be all solid. But if you see that porous layer, you'll know. Hang on, I was just going to say. I was just thinking of something else. You'll when you see that porous bone, you know that that's a young animal, a young creature, or whatever, a young creature. Well, later on, as that creature grows, that bone develops and it becomes more solid, or completely solid in most cases. So what they found was with these three, and if you look at the pictures of these things, if I don't know if Matt's there, if he could show it or not, but I mean, I suppose I could show it. Hang on, let me see.
I've been scrolling.
I could show it
as you talk.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize. All right, let me go back. Yeah, and so as it fills in, it becomes completely solid, and the bone becomes solid. So what they discovered they discovered that the Draco, the first one with the horns sticking out, like looking really vicious, like a real mean little dragon there, that's actually the fully grown Dracorex. But as it grows, these sharp points and these bones absorb in, and the dome grows. And what they discovered when they cross-sectioned these with a really sharp saw is that basically that is a growing dinosaur. So that's not three different species. These first two are a developing species, and you can see from the nose, like the bones on the nose from when they're young to when they're older. This is exactly the same species. Can you see the amount of change in that? I mean, you could go on for hours about that one picture. And the amount of change in this is incredible. I mean, you got epigenetic, like the not just like this. This is part of the plan as the thing grows, its body plan, and it changes from that to that. That's incredible. I mean, when you see this stuff, and then you go down, like say, you start looking at juvenile chimp brains. I'd like to know that some of these fossils that they find in the fossil record, some of these skulls, these bones of these extinct chimps and like apes that they say are human ancestors, like Nutcracker Man and that, I'd like to know if they have, if they've ever cross-sectioned the thicker parts of the bones that they find to see if that they're still growing bones, or they're adolescent, or they're young, or adult bone, and in a lot of cases you just can't tell because the fossilization process, the minerals will go in and completely fill up the entire thing. And I'm willing to bet if you went into that Dracorex, just to cut back to that Dracorex thing, that younger one, if you went into that porous bone would have soft tissue in there. I'm willing to bet you $1 million. I even though I don't have $1 million on in the bank account, I'd shake on that and say that there'd be soft tissue in that. I mean, look at it. That the fossilization process would normally sort of fill that in, and yet that's still, like you got the matrix there, the bone, like little cells and the growing cells inside the bone and everything growing. You can see it. It's how did that fossilize so perfectly like that? I mean, I'm telling you, that's got soft tissue in it for certain. But with these skulls, I think a lot of these skulls, these creatures that they see in the fossil record are either juvenile extinct species of ape, like say Gigantopithecus. Can you imagine Gigantopithecus can get up to, I think, 10 or 11 or 9 or 10 feet or 11 feet tall, this 9 foot tall ape. Can you imagine a 9 foot tall ape? I mean, you got a 9 to 10 or 11 foot tall ape. And can you imagine how big the juvenile of that ape species would be? And if you have a look at a juvenile ape skull, it looks very human, right? So I'm thinking a lot of it's maybe, I don't know for sure, but you'd need to have a lot more money than I have, and you'd need to get access to very rare fossils and be able to saw them in half and check this stuff out, which they wouldn't let you do. But because obviously it's going to disprove evolution, so they wouldn't even look for it. They wouldn't dare, and they wouldn't ruin, fossils because they don't have that many of them. So, the chances of finding out whether I'm right or not are pretty slim, but it's still a pretty good working hypothesis, that some of them, I'm not saying all of them are, but some of them at least are. And the other ones, like you look at Nutcracker Man, you look at that skull, one of their biggest evidences is they turn it over and they show that the former magnum comes out the bottom. Oh, okay, it's got to do with the tilt of the skull and all sorts of different things. But the simple fact is, it doesn't matter whether the foramen magnum comes out the bottom. It's just an extinct species of ape that had the foramen magnum coming out the bottom of the skull. I mean, even evolutionists admit that the Earth today is a veritable biological desert compared to what it was before. Okay. So, look at the weird creatures we've got on this Earth and the massive biological diversity we've got now. Can you imagine going back in time where biodiversity was just, 90-fold what it is now? You know what I mean? It's like the species that you would see would blow your mind. I mean, God was creative. He created a lot of different species. You look at those creatures, they are apes. They are just extinct species of apes. And there's all sorts of question marks that hang over Homo naledi, all sorts of question marks over that discovery. I mean, people say, they treat Homo naledi as if it's a real thing. I think it's a hoax, and it'll be eventually proven to be a hoax. But there's already evidence to suggest that it may be a hoax. There's actual evidence for that, so it's not just someone hoping that it's a hoax. There's evidence that the bones were placed there, the way that they were gathered up, destroyed other evidence and biological evidence and all sorts of things. So there's a lot of question marks hanging over Homo naledi, and even so, they say that these apes were dragging the apes to the back of a deep cave, and they say that apes, wild animals won't go into it. They'll go into a cave, but they'll never go right to the back into the very dark, deep back depths of the cave. No wild animal will do that. So that's what they say, that these things must have been burying their dead and dragging them in there and throwing them down there. Well, I say it's just as likely that maybe they were these little ape creatures. They weren't that tall. Were the pets of say maybe or like working pets of that climbed up trees and got nuts of the Neanderthals that lived there or something. Who knows? I don't know. They said that they'd been burying them there over 100 and something year period. Well, maybe the Neanderthals lived there and they had these apes that used to climb up tall trees for them and gather seeds or something from the top. Who knows? I don't know. But all I know is that maybe they were pets of humans back then. Maybe the humans dragged them to the back of the cave and buried them. That was their way of burying them, sort of thing, or their ritual thing. I don't know. But all I know is that there's question marks hanging over that, and there's also other things it could be. I mean, okay, they'd say, okay, you'd find other human artifacts there and stuff. I'm willing to bet that if you went out around that area and went digging down around in that region, that you'd find a lot of human artifacts. People weren't in the habit, but tools, when they made tools back in those days, were very, very, rare. Like, it's not something you could just go down to the corner store and, you know, put your card into a machine and buy what you needed. If you didn't have a certain tool, you could die. So they didn't just leave tools lying around, and that's why you don't find them everywhere. But I mean, you look at those apes back in those times, the way that they were buried and everything, it's just sus. It's very suspect. There's an article out there that debunks it. I can't remember the name of it. Maybe Matt could post the link for that article that shows the problems that they have with that Homo naledi discovery, and that should open up some people's eyes if they ever bother to read it. I can't remember. Let me have a look in the docs. But anyway, I think I better go. And well, Matt, you there? I was going to go on about this for a while, but I'm getting tired, so I can't think straight. So I'm just going to head off, I think. You there? From California. Yeah, hey, April. No, that always reminds me Mendoza. What's that? That's the Simpsons. The Arnie replica, the guy that plays the Arnie character sort of thing. Can't remember what they call him. That's one of his arch enemies, nemesis, was Mendoza. Anyway, okay, I'm gonna get going. So, welcome and goodbye. I suppose we'll be live some other time. And Matt, oh yeah, you're there.
Yeah.
So,
thanks, man.
Did you want to? I'm just babbling anyway at this point. I'm too tired to, and I've been sitting around for hours. I've got other things to do, so my mind's wandering, thinking about I got to do this and do that. So, yeah, we better go. I suppose. Have you got anything that you want to announce? I think George said something to me about Standing for Truth was going live or something.
Oh wow, tonight! Wow, tomorrow.
No, I don't know.
But,
no, he might be. I don't know if he was talking about tonight or not.
Probably nothing tonight.
No.
Late for him. It's already 1 a.m. there where he lives. So.
Oh yeah, no. Okay. Yeah.
So
all right.
I will be going with him live on his channel and
tomorrow
a 3-hour or so presentation debunking a video, and then I'll immediately put it on this channel after, so my viewers as well get to see it.
Okay.
And
sure.
we're gonna go live again. We can do it really anytime. It just kind of depends on everybody's schedule. Sometimes we just wing it though, like tonight. I didn't plan on going live even tonight. So if people like this, we'll go live more often. So I'll find out what Jason's schedule is, and we'll go live next time he's available.
Yeah. Well, and I can talk about it when I'm a little bit. Just that I got. Oh, my dogs actually are pretty calm at the moment. They're sitting down surprisingly. Normally they're really, really annoying, but I know it's going to erupt any minute, and they'll start whinging at me, and I want to go out. So I don't know. It's like you live with them 24/7, 365 days a year, literally. You know, you get to know them, so I know they're gonna start. It's like your son. Here it comes. All right.
Thanks,
okay, man.
Have a good night.
Right, look, yeah, God bless, and be looking forward to that premiere tomorrow of you and Standing destroying the who is it again?
Sentinel.
Those idiots that run people down or something in a video. They're running YEC down.
Yes, they are. You'll see it.
I can't wait. All right.
Cool.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Bye,
I'll see you,
everyone.
man. God bless everybody.